Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Kushina left Konoha with Naruto went to Kumo, where third Raikage adopts Naruto as his own son. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A bit more than a year after the Kyuubi attack, it was a clear night in Konoha no Sato, village hidden in the leaves, the shinobi village in service to Hai no Kuni, land of fire, one of the 5 great shinobi nations ruling the large continent, the elemental nations. Arguably the most powerful of the 5 great hidden villages, Konoha endured and survived attacks from the other 4 great hidden villages, and several Kushina left Konoha with Naruto went to Kumo, where third Raikage adopts Naruto as his own son. Are villages in 3 separate large-scale conflicts, called the Great Shinobi Wars. Even more impressive, they came out among the decisive victors in each of those wars. Konoha resides deep within a giant forest at the base of a mountain known as the Hokage Monument, which has the faces of all those who have taken the office of Hokage engraved on it. The whole city was surrounded by a giant wooden wall. Most of the buildings were made entirely from wood because the village's founder Hashirama Senju created most of the original village by using his famed Mokuton wood release. Population-wise, Konoha was the biggest of all hidden villages, but had at the same time the most civilians compared to its shinobis, which means its big population says nothing about its military power. While generally seen as the most powerful of the ninja villages, Konoha has enjoyed many years of relative peace and stability, but that was in the past. Right now Konoha wasn't in a great shape. Signs of past destruction, half repaired and new buildings could be seen everywhere in the whole village. The reason for this? A bit over a year ago, on the 10th October, Konoha was attacked. Not by another village or a hostile army, but the Kyuubi no Imko, 9-tailed demon fox, strongest of all 9 bijuous-tailed beasts, himself. The Kyuubi suddenly appeared out of nowhere, attacked Konoha and nearly destroyed half of it and caused many casualties until he finally could be defeated. Beyond Aim Hokage, 4th Fire Shadow, Minato Namikaze, the Konoha no Kairoi Senkim, Konoha's Yellow Flash, the fastest man alive himself, defeated the beast at the cost of his life by sealing it into a baby with the name Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, his own newborn son, making him the Jinchuriki, power of the human sacrifice, of the Kyuubi, 9 tails. His last wish was that his son would be seen as a hero and not as the beast that was sealed into him. But his wish was not fulfilled. Because of the decision of the now reinstated Sandaime Hokage, 3rd Fire Shadow, Hiruzen Sarutobi to keep it a secret that Naruto is the Yondaime's son to protect him from the enemies his father made. As soon as the information got out that the Yondaime sealed the Kyuubi into a baby, the citizens of Konoha screamed for the death of Naruto. Only a few people, mostly friends of Minato and of his wife Kushina Uzumaki, Minato's 2 surviving students Kakashi Haddock and Rin Nahara, the Sandaime Hokage and his 2 remaining loyal students of the Densetsu no Sannin, legendary 3 ninja, Jiraiya the Gama Sennin, Toad Sage, the teacher of Minato and Naruto's godfather and Tsunade Senju, the Konoha no Namakuji Haim, Konoha's Slug Princess, granddaughter of Hashirama Senju the Shodai Hokage, 1st Fire Shadow, teacher of Kushina and Naruto's godmother, didn't see Naruto as the demon and trust Minato's skill in Genjutsu, sealing techniques, to ensure the safety of his son from the demon inside of the seal. Hokage Tower, outside the meeting chamber. Currently most of former mentioned persons are in a council meeting at the Hokage Tower. Outside the chamber where the council meeting takes place, 2 guardians stands at guard and tried to listen to the voices that could be heard outside. Apparently the mood inside the chamber was really tense. Suddenly a very strong wave of killing intent washed over guards and nearly let them faint, and a shout of a woman could be heard. Never. I've said it before and I will say it again. Not in 1,000 years, you goddamn bastards. After this, the woman stormed out of the chamber in such a rush that the opening door almost knocked the guards out. This woman was Kushina Uzumaki, the secret wife of Minato Namikaze and mother of Naruto, and also one of the last living members of the once powerful and famed Uzumaki clan of the now destroyed Uzushiogakure no Sato, village hidden by whirling tides. Kushina was a very beautiful young woman with a slender but feminine build, fair skin, violet eyes, fiery red hair, a common trait among the members of the Uzumaki clan that almost all members shared that fall down to her waist and an average height of 165 centimeters. She wore a standard Konoha Jounin flak jacket over a black short-sleeved shirt, black shinobi sandals, black form-fitting pants that reached her calves, a blue Konoha hit I-8 that keeps her hair out of her face, and a katana on her back with the handle over her right shoulder. Streets of Konoha. Right now she walked toward her new home. Her and Minato's old home was destroyed during the Kyuubi attack, where her son was under the protection by 2 of the last remaining persons she trusted in these days. Minato's former 2 students Kakashi Haddock and Rin Nahara. While walking down the road she's thinking about the meeting. Once again, like all council meetings since the info of Naruto's Jinchuriki status was leaked to the villagers, she had to listen to the civilians' never-ending shouting and their demands for Naruto's banishment or his death. They even went as far to demand his public execution with the words to fulfill the wish of the yondaime and get rid of the demon brat, but for Kushina was the point where she couldn't take it anymore reached when also once again one of the elder, Danzo, the former teammate and friend of the Sandaime Hokage and a ruthless warmonger who would do anything for the good of Konoha, demanded to give Naruto in his care to turn him into a mindless weapon for the greater good and even got support from some civilians and, sadly, also from some shinobis, mostly from the Uchiha clan head Fugaku Uchiha. That was when she snapped and left. And while she walked down the road, if someone would stand close enough, he would hear her muttering. The greater good. Ha, greater good my ass. You only want your own pet Jinchuriki to gain more power and take over Konoha. I even bet it was you who let leak the information about Naruto out to get the chance to get him in your crippled hands. Ha, only over my dead body, you old fossil. And you others who support him, you can all go to hell with your stupidity, ignorance and hate. Especially you Fugaku team means bastard. But while she's ranting, she cannot help but think about how disappointed she is about the actions of the villagers and how deep they have fallen. First they ignore Minato's last wish and call for Naruto's death while same time praise Minato. Then the Sandaime Hokage denied to reveal that Naruto is Minato's son, even if it was with a noble intention to save him from Iwa's wrath, and never really did something other to help Naruto than declare his Jinchuriki status an S-class secret and punishing it by death if someone tells it the younger generations. But the final point that nearly drives her mad is that Naruto has to be guarded all the time because of assassination attempts, especially on his birthday the 10th October. While she once loved this village and was utterly loyal to it, for some time she asked herself if it wouldn't be better to leave, but knows at the same time that this would force the Sandaime to declare her a Nukenin, missing ninja, and send the Anbus after her because Naruto is the village's Jinchuriki and as such cannot be allowed to leave Konoha. Suddenly she got an idea and decided to discuss it with Rin and Kakashi when she was at home. Kushina's home. As soon as Kushina her home, she was greeted by two shinobis who appears besides her, both pointing a kunai at her throat. Calm down, Rin, Kakashi. It's me, Kushina. Kushina says to the two figures. Prove it. The right person said, now clearly recognizable as a female. If you really are Kushina Uzumaki, then you surely know what the inspiration for Naruto's name was. The left person, a male, continued. Sure. It was the main character of Jiraiya's first book, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi, who has the same name. It was Minato's favorite book. Kushina answered. After this both persons stepped out of the shadows and the female could now be identified as Rin Nahara, the only female of Minato's students, and the male as Kakashi Haddock. Rin is a teenager of circa 15 years and of average height. She had straight brown hair, which is cut in a chin-length bob that frame her face, and brown eyes. She also had a rectangular purple marking on either sides of her cheeks. She wore a long-sleeved black top and a light purple apron skirt, under which she wore black shorts. She also wore the standard Konoha hit I-8, the standard Konoha Chunin flak jacket, along with a pair of sandals, red stockings that stopped at her thighs, and a small red bracelet on her left wrist. She also wore several pouches on her belt. Kakashi was a fit and relatively tall teenager, also around 15 years old, with spiky, gravity-defying silver hair and dark gray eyes. He wore a mask that covers the nose and lower half of his face. He wore a black t-shirt with white stripes in the middle of the sleeves, dark blue pants and sandals, with white bandages wrapped around his ankles, and a steel gray Anbu flak jacket. On his arms he wore black sleeves with metal arm protectors over them. He also had leather straps around his back and chest, a tanto kept in a small holder in the middle of his back, a shuriken holster on his right thigh and a kunai pouch on his back. He wore his Konoha hit I-8 as a makeshift eye patch over his left eye, which is an implanted Sharingan, copy we lie, he received from Obito Uchiha, his and Rin's deceased team partner and Minato's third student. Personality-wise, they look really different. While Rin is almost ever seen with a smile on her face, Kakashi almost ever has a bored or uninterested expression. It's really you? I'm glad you're back. Rin say with a bright smile. I'm also glad to be back, Rin. How's my Sachi-kun? Kushina asked with a hint of worry in her voice. Oh, he is alright. Right now he sleeps in his crib in the living room. After you left, he seemed to miss you and was crying, but after Rin started to play with him he stopped. Then after she fed him he nearly immediately went sleeping. That's basically what he was doing the whole time you were away. By the way, how was the meeting? Kakashi asked with a bored expression, as if it didn't interest him the slightest. Don't ask. It was horrible. I was forced to listen again to the stupid demands of the civilians to kill Naruto and Danzo's requests to turn him into a mindless weapon for the good of Konoha. After some time I couldn't take it anymore and left. Kushina snarled, while radiate a murderous aura. That seemed to trigger a reaction by both because what from Kakishi's expression could be seen that showed clearly anger and Rin's smile disappeared immediately and she continued with sadness almost dripping from every word. So they still spit on sensei's last wish because of their hate. Kushina looked at the two and could see how hurt and disgusted they are from the actions of Konoha's citizens and she decided to tell them her idea. She sits down on the couch and ordered them to do the same. Rin. Kakashi. I have something to tell you. Can you please listen? Both nodded and so she continued. On my way back, I thought about the whole situation and came to the decision that I cannot take it anymore. I will not accept that my son has to grow up in despair because of some stupid people. That means I will leave Konoha. What? Rin and Kakashi shouted simultaneously with faces that shows complete disbelief. Silence. Let me finish. Kushina ordered with a serious voice that proved Rin and Kakashi, she means it. Suddenly Naruto who was in a crib in the same room began to cry, so Kushina stood up, took him in her arms and began sway him softly to soothe him. As soon Naruto stopped crying she sits back on the couch with Naruto still in her arms and continued explaining. Look, I realize that in this village Naruto will never have to grow up normally or to be happy because a lot of the older people hates or fears him. Because of the Sandame's law they cannot tell the children that Naruto is the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, but they can say them to stay away from him and tell them nearly everything as a reason, as long as it isn't the truth. I will not let that happen. I'm very thankful for what you have done for Naruto and me and how much you helped me after Minato's death, but I will not ask from to come with me and left everything behind you know. I only ask you to keep the fact Naruto and I are still alive a secret. Kushina said to them. For a few moments nobody said anything, then after looking at each other Rin and Kakashi both with an expression of utter determination again almost says simultaneously. We will come with you. After this Kushina had obviously strong decision difficulties. On one side she wants that they stay, on the other side she wants to hug them for not leaving her and Naruto alone, and so she stuttered with a troubled expression. Wait. As I said I don't want require this from you, and Kushina-san, shut the hell up. Kakashi and I have sworn at sensei's grave to help watching after his son because we want to return some of his kindness to his son after everything he did for us. Even if we have to leave this ungrateful village. Yes, it's a hard decision, but I'm sure Obito would think the same if he would be still alive. And by the way, we are both orphans and sensei was some kind of a father figure for us which makes you and Naruto our family too. It also means nobody will really missing us. Rin interrupts her with a dead serious expression and effectively stopped her protest in the beginning. I think exactly the same. If you don't want us to come with you, you will have to tie us up and leave us behind. Kakashi continued with his trademark high smile. After hearing this, Kushina couldn't act different than thank them over and over again for this kind words with tears in her eyes. Well, now that this cleared, what exactly is your plan? How do you want to leave without anybody noticing, and where are we going? Kakashi asked a question that bothered him since the beginning of this conversation. Well, for how we were left without having Oinen, Hunter Ninja, sent after us. We have to die. In the eyes of Konoha at least. And for the question where to go, I plan to go to the place where most people would never expect me and also where Jinchuriki at least have the chance to be treated like humans. I plan to go to Kumagakure no Sato, the village hidden in the clouds. Kushina revealed with a mischievous gleam in her eyes. Do you really think it's a good idea to go to Kumo? Well, it's true that nobody who knows you and your past would search you there, but do you really want to trust the people who tried to kidnap you with the safety of your son? Came the suspicious question of Rin. Yes, I'm sure. It's true that I have an unpleasant past with Kumo, but the past is the past and presence is the presence. For the safety of Naruto I'm willing to forgive and forget the events in the past. Kushina responded with every conviction she has left. But why Kumo? Asked Kakashi. Well, I remembered hearing from Minato that the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi no Kaijic, eight-tailed giant ox, does not only have perfect control over his Bijuu, but also is the adopted son of the Sandame Raikage, third lightning shadow, and is in Kumagakure, hailed as a hero and a guardian. The Sandame Raikage is also known to be a man with a great sense of honor who dislikes underhanded actions, even if they are necessary. And every good Kage would never miss the chance to get 3 powerful ninja and a Jinchuriki additionally to his village's own forces. It's also common knowledge that Kumo has the least clans and even fewer Kekkei Genkai, bloodline limit, of the major hidden villages, which means they surely wouldn't turn down the offer from the last living member of the clan head family from the Uzumaki clan, together with her son and the last living member and heir of the Hada clan, to join their village. Kushina explained with a grin. Well, I have to admit it sounds like one of your better ideas. Rin admitted, but what is with Hokage-sama and Naruto-kun's godparents Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya-sama? Will they be involved too? No. At least not at the beginning. Sarutobi would most likely never let Naruto go and insist to give the people the chance to change, and Jiraiya is very loyal to Konoha, that means he maybe never is allowed to find out this even after we left. Tsunade would most likely agree with me, but it would cause too much suspicion if she would disappear with us. After we died she and Shizune most likely will leave Konoha, which means after some time we can search her and explain everything to her. Kushina replied. You're aware that Tsunade will most likely tear you a new one for that. Rin warned. After hearing this, Kushina couldn't help but be slightly terrified because she remembered Tsunade's short temper and her habits to go on a rampage if something made her angry and beat everyone to a pulp who is the target of her wrath. She have to admit to herself that she was slightly afraid of her former sensei. Rin and Kakashi couldn't help but snicker at the sight of Kushina sweating while remembering all this. They thought it was ironic because Kushina and Tsunade were extremely similar in terms of their temper. After a few minutes a slightly nervous Kushina replied to the two snickering teens. Well, that may be true, but it's a risk I'm willing to make. I'm sure Tsunade-sensei will understand my situation and why I decided to do it that way. I hope she will. Kushina continued muttering under her breath, what caused Rin and Kakashi to burst out in laughter, much to Kushina's annoyance. Well, if you're sure to do it, then we should watch it. Kakashi suddenly shouted as he had noticed movements outside of the window and his instinct screaming danger to him. At the same moment Kushina, Kakashi and Rin went into fighting stances, the window shattered, and a group of shinobi in Anbu-like outfits with masks that root written on it bursts into the room, causing Naruto beginning to cry again at the sudden intrusion. Hurry up, retrieve the boy and kill every witnesses. Danzo-sama wishes to have this boy under his command as a tool for the greater good of Konoha. Said the one who was apparently the leader of the group. To say Kushina was fuming would be a massive understatement. Danzo. I should have known it. But to see the positive side of this incident. This makes a good cover story for us to leave. She said in a too calm voice that promises incredible pain and death. Then she turned to Rin which stood right behind her and say to her. Could you please hold Naruto for a while? I have to kill some idiots who doesn't know their own strength. While shouting the last part, she changed into her rage mode, in which her hair moves around like the 9 tails of the Kyuubi, her eyes become white circles, and a terrifying crimson-red aura surrounding her, what gives her a slightly demonic appearance. She also let out a killing intent that could rival a Bijuu's own killing intent. While hearing her saying this and feeling her killing intent, all root members, even though they should not be able to feel emotions, altogether nearly shit their pants and trembled with fear, well knowing they are fucked sideways. Hokage office, a few minutes earlier. Currently here is in Sarutobi the Sandaime Hokage, also known as the Professor and the Kami no Shinobi, God of Shinobi, was in his office together with his 2 former students. Jiraiya and Tsunade. If an outsider would have looked at the Sandaime, most wouldn't see the mightiest shinobi of Konoha, but a rather small old man with a grey goatee, lots of wrinkles and a smoking tobacco pipe in his mouth, who is wearing the traditional Hokage robes, which are the customary hat with the kanji for fire, K, high, on it, and a haori with a red full-length kimono that is tied using a white sash. Jiraiya and Tsunade on the other hand looked more intimidating. Jiraiya was a tall man with waist-length spiky white hair tied back into a ponytail, with 2 shoulder-length bangs that framed both sides of his face. He also had red lines that ran down from his eyes and wore a horned forehead protector with the kanji for oil superscript Wanabura, which denotes his affiliation with Mount Mamboku. He also had a noticeable wart on the left side of his nose. Jiraiya wore a green short shirt kimono and matching pants, under which he wore mesh armor that showed out of the sleeves and legs of his outfit. His outfit was completed with hand guards, a simple black belt, traditional Japanese jeta, wooden sandals, a red haori with 2 simple yellow circles on each side, and a large scroll on his back. Tsunade is a light-skinned woman of average height with brown eyes and straight blonde hair. Her hair is waist-length with shoulder-length bangs framing both sides of her face. Tsunade usually ties her hair into 2 loose ponytails. She also has a violet rhombus mark on her forehead. She wore a grass-green haori with the kanji for Gambalai cake written in black on the back, inside a red circle. Underneath she wore a grey kimono-style blouse with no sleeves, held closed by a broad dark bluish-grey obi that matches her pants. Her blouse is closed quite low, revealing her sizable cleavage. She wore open-toed, strappy black sandals with high heels and red polish on both her fingernails and toenails. She also wore a soft pink lipstick. Besides being nearly 40 years old, she looks still like a young woman with a rather large bust. Currently Hiruzen Sarutobi feels very old because he couldn't hold his promise at his former successor and now predecessor Minato Namikaze to protect his son. Sensei, you have to do something about this. I will not accept Naruto being further treated like this, even if it means I have to summon Gamabunta, Gamma Hero and Gamakin to stamp some people into the ground. Jiraiya shouted angry while walking up and down before Sarutobi's desk. Jiraiya, what should I do? As the Hokage I cannot show favoritism. Hiruzen replies tired. Bullshit sensei. You're the fucking Hokage, the big boss, the alpha. In case you have forgotten, I will remind you that a shinobi village is a dictatorship, not a democracy. That means the people obey to your order or face grave punishment. For Kama's sake, you were once called the Kami no Shinobi, and they called your name only with respect. And now look at you. You let the civilian council and the elders piece for piece undermine your authority. If you wouldn't let them do as they please, we wouldn't have this problem anyway. Tsunade continued, not less angry than Jiraiya. After hearing this, the Sandaime let his head hung in shame. After a few moments of silence, he spoke with a tired voice. You're right. I've failed Minato, Kushina and little Naruto-kun. Maybe I should, but before he could finish his sentence, a loud explosion could be heard and a giant fireball rose above one of Konoha's outer districts. After seeing this, all three of could feel a cold hand grab their hearts because Kushina's house was in the direction where the explosion happened. Without further talking, Hiruzen, Sarutobi, Jiraiya and Tsunade raced to Kushina's house, but at their arrival, they could find their worst fears confirmed. Kushina's house didn't exist anymore. Everything left was a charred ruin and charred parts of human bodies that were scattered in a 200-meter radius. All three of them watched what they saw with horror, and everyone thought different about it. I'm so sorry, Minato, Kushina and Naruto. I've failed you all. No, that can't be happening. I was supposed to protect them. Why did I have to fail again? Why do you keep taking anybody from me who I have feelings for, Konoha? First my grandfather, granduncle, mother and father, then my little brother and my beloved Dan, and now Minato, Kushina and Naruto. Why? After a few minutes, in which they looked with sad and shocked expressions at the cruel reality that revealed itself in front of them, the faint and hoarse voice of Tsunade could be heard. I have enough, sensei. This only happened because of you being so lax. I will left this hellhole of a village and will most likely never return. I'm not willing to lose any more people I like to Konoha. She said this while tears running down her cheek, and when she was finished she turned around and left. A few hours later in the Hokage's office, Jiraiya and the Sandaime discussed the incident. Can you hear it? Some of this idiot celebrate the death of the demon brat, Jiraiya asked the Sandaime while shaking in anger. Yes. It let me wonder how deep Konoha has fallen, Sarutobi says in a mix of shame and anger. After that, he took a file of his office table and reached it to Jiraiya with a grim expression. Jiraiya, what I'm now about to say to you is an S-class secret which nobody outside this room is allowed to know, do you understand? After Jiraiya nodded, the Sandaime continued. From what the Anbu have reported, the body parts were from the unknown attackers, and they were at least 15 persons. None of it was from Kushina, Naruto, Kakashi or Rin, but some civilians and shinobi who witnessed the event have sworn they had seen a group of shinobi left in a hurry shortly before the explosion. But how many they were nobody could say for sure, only that one of them had a bundle of the size of a baby in his hands. After hearing this, Jiraiya's face is showing some hope. You mean they could be still alive? Then we have to tell it Tsunade to lessen her pain. No. For all we know they could be kidnapped by who knows whom. We don't have to give her false hope. If we find an evidence that they are still alive, we will tell her. Sarutobi answered with a serious expression. This has to remain a secret because if it's known they could be still alive, some fractions inside this village would not rest until they found them. You mean Danzo, Jiraiya added, and the Sandaime nodded. Okay. Then I will now leave too, and I will try find them and the one who have abducted them. I will not return before I at least have found a clue of their whereabouts. After saying it, Jiraiya disappeared in a Konoha Shunshin, leaf body flicker. I hope you will be successful, Jiraiya. Or all of us could never face Minato in the afterlife again. The Sandaime thought before he went back to work. Kumagakure, Raikage office, 3 weeks later. Kumagakure, one of the 5 great shinobi villages. The village is located in a range of tall mountains and is literally hidden in the clouds. The Raikage works in a large blue structure which has a top covered in plants and is built into the tallest mountain. All of the surrounding mountains have been hollowed out and have buildings built into them. While all clan compounds and most of the shinobi families' homes are located on the mountains, the civilians living on the valley ground. Well, Kumo isn't the biggest of the hidden villages, it's the most militaristic one and have the most prosperous economy of all hidden villages. The village can only be entered through a single ravine in the surrounding mountains, which is secured by a massive wall made from iron and stone and had a massive iron gate. Kumo was the home of some of the strongest shinobis in the entire world, including its leader, the Sandaime Raikage Raisin Yutsuki. Raisin was one of the strongest shinobi to ever live and was on the same level as legends like Hashirama Senju, Tobirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. A testament for his strength was when he fought 10,000 shinobi and held them up for 3 days and 3 nights before his reinforcements come, or when he single-handed fought the rampaging Hachibi to a draw so that the Hachibi could be sealed again. Raisin was a gigantic, around 2.60 meter, dark-skinned man with a largely muscular and well-defined build. He had a full head of blonde hair which flowed into his back along with a long beard. He had unusual eyes, which had green irides, dark sclerae and no pupils. His face has pronounced cheekbones and tear troughs under his eyes, and a prominent crease across his forehead with a mole above his right eyebrow. His top lip also had a darker pigmentation than the bottom one. His canine teeth were also slightly elongated. He has the kanji for lightning divided by Kaminari tattooed on his right shoulder. Following a battle with the Eight Tails, O also gained a lightning bolt-shaped scar that runs across the right side of his chest. His typical attire consisted of Kumogakure's distinctive single-strap flak jacket with no other clothing underneath, a black forehead protector that he wore like a bandana, and a thick red rope tied around his waist. With this he also wore dark blue sweatpants, black shinobi sandals, and the standard Kumo shin guards. He was also the current clan head of the famed Yutsuki clan of Komagakure and was said to be the strongest Raiten, lightning release, user alive, and after the death of Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, the second fastest man alive, only second to his own son A. Sitting in his office at the top floor of the Raikage Tower, Raisin was facing his strongest enemy and worst nightmare. Paperwork, the eternal bane of all cages and village leaders. He was sifting through the endlessly replenishing pile of reports and official documents that was his reluctantly accepted duty to oversee. The huge man growled low in his throat as he read yet another sheet outlining the supplies Kumo's hospital once again felt they were in dire need of. I swear, he thought to himself as he approved the seemingly trivial list of demands. As soon as A's ready to take over, I'm stepping down. I'm a warrior for Kami's sake, not a fucking secretary. As soon as he thought this, an idea was popping into his mind. A secretary. That's not a bad idea. Why didn't I sooner thought about enlisting a secretary? That's it, the solution to my problems. I think I even know the right person for this job. I've heard this girl, Mabui, B's longtime crush in the academy, is really good with logistics and similar stuff, while doesn't show a lot of interest for missions outside the village. Currently was grinning like a Cheshire cat. I should call her immediately and ask if she's interested. His internal tirade was interrupted by a knock at his office door. "Is open," he growled, before lifting his gaze as a tall man around Raisin's age entered the office. This man was Dodai, tag team partner and oldest friend of Raisin. Dodai had short and spiky dark-colored hair that was largely obscured underneath a stylized forehead protector in the form of a hat. Because of his age, the contours of his face had become more pronounced, and he had a small goatee. He wears the high-collared variant of the Komagakure outfit, along with flak jacket and an eye patch over his left eye. The eye patch has the same stylized kanji for lightning divided by Kaminari inscribed upon it that Raisin has tattooed on his right shoulder. Dodai is a strong and famed shinobi of Komagakure and amongst other things known for his quick reactions and thinking, being a great strategist, being able to react to Raisin speed, and for possessing the Imton, lava release, Kekkei Genkai, and being able to create vulcanized rubber-like material with it, what makes him the bane of nearly every Raiten, lightning release, user. As soon as Raisin recognized who has entered, he grumbled. "Dodai, what are you doing here? I hope it's important. Because as you can certainly see, I am really busy." After saying this, he sighed and muttered unfortunately. After hearing this, Dodai could not help and smirk a bit but soon became serious again. "Raikage-sama, we have a problem," he said with a serious voice. "What is it?" Raisin growled, because if Dodai act like he did right now, most of the times this would mean more paperwork and a serious headache for him. Raisin. "Well, I best start from the beginning. As you surely remember, I and Shock Anbu Unit 17 were assigned for border patrol at the border to Shimo no Kuni, Land of Frost. As we just want to head back for Kumo, we noticed a small group of 3 peoples enveloped in hooded cloaks crossing the border without noticing us. They clearly were trained shinobis, so we decided to observe them and watch where they intend to go. After we followed them for some time, we realized they were heading right for Kumo. As soon as we realized that, we stopped them and demanded to know who they are and what they want in our land." Dodai reports. Yeah. But what is now the problem you need me to know?" Raisin asked while getting a bit impatient. "Well, as soon we stopped them, we could feel their chakra and could see that they are a man and 2 women, one of the woman and the man seemed to be around the same age, while the second woman appeared to be a few years older. The younger woman is clearly a Jounin, while the man most likely is an Anbu. But the older woman was the most shocking because her chakra reserves are at cage level. Oh, before I forget it, they have a child with them, a baby about 1-year-old." Dodai continued, while Raisin seemingly run out of nerves. As soon we surrounded them and demand for them to reveal their faces and intentions, the older woman who was apparently the leader answered that they demand a personal meeting with the Raikage. Until they were granted that they would keep their identities hidden. "The others sent me to ask you what we should do because they are really strong." After hearing all this, Raisin rubbed his temples and groaned while thinking, what should I do? Normally nobody would agree to such a cheeky demand and simply kick them out of the land. But what do they want? And why are there only 3 of them, and why did they have a baby with them? This makes no sense. After thinking a while over it, he ordered Dodai, "I will meet with them in my office. Please escort them to me." But before you go, send Anbus out to search for my sons A and B and tell them I want them to appear in my office at once. Especially B. Say him he has to appear ASAP. Yes, Raikage-sama. I will arrive with them in a bit more than 2 hours. I answered and disappeared. 2 hours later, A, the son of Raisin, was currently standing in his father's office at the right side and was wondering what this all was about. Out of nothing he received the message that his father demands his presence for something, but in the 30 minutes he stand now right beside his father he had not heard once what was the reason for his presence. Right now he was running out of patience. As he was standing beside Raisin, it was clearly visible that they are father and son. A was an extremely tall, around 2.40 meters, dark-skinned man with a large muscular build, with his blonde hair combed back and a beard. His face was very distinguished with pronounced cheekbones and tear troughs under his eyes and a prominent crease across his forehead. He had pointed canines, and his top lip also has a darker hue than the bottom one, traits he inherited from his father. He had black Ma shuriken tattoos on both shoulders and he had gold bangle bracelets on each wrist. He wore a purple high-collared outfit with ragged sleeve and matching pants, along with a white flak jacket and shin guards, and also wears a gold belt around his waist with a boar's face engraved in the center. Yo, old man, what is this all about? Why did you let me appear ASAP in your office only for me to stand here to wait for I don't know what? Asked a rather irritated A. Don't be that impatient, boy. But for what I've asked your presence, earlier this morning. I came into my office and said that 3 unknown shinobi entered Kaminari no Kuni, Lightning Country, and demanded a meeting with me. This meeting starts as soon they're here, what should be every moment from now. That's the reason I want you and B to be present. By the way, where the hell is B? Raisin grumbled back. Wait, you've agreed to have a meeting with 3 unknown persons? A asked with disbelief. Exactly. With you, me and B, if this brat would be here, we would have 2 S-ranked and 1 SS-ranked shinobi in this room. As you see, nothing to worry about. As soon Raisin finished, the office door opened and revealed 3 persons with grey cloaks and a shock Anbu unit as well as a storm Anbu unit behind them. As soon they have entered and the doors were closed again, 2 of the strangers, one of them with a bundle which seemed to be the mentioned baby, sat down on a couch at one side of the room, while the third sat down on a chair across from Raisin. Greetings, Raikage-sama. I would like to thank you for meeting us under such circumstances, said the person, which was now clearly recognizable as a woman. HMPF, now that you are here, take off your cloaks, state your name and what you want. Then we will see if the talks are continued or not, Raisin replied. Of course. The women said while at the same time nodding at her companions, and they all took off their cloaks. As soon they did, everyone in the room tensed at the sight of their Konoha flak jackets and uniforms. At the same time looked at the red-haired women at the opposite of his father and could only think she's beautiful. After recognizing who they are, Raisin frowned and asked, so, that's a surprise. What are Kushina Uzumaki, Konoha Zakai Chishio no Habanero, Red Hot-Blooded Habanero, and Minato Namikaze's former students Rin Nahara and Kakashi Haddock, also known as Sharingan no Kakashi, Kakashi of the Sharingan, doing in my village? We came to Kumo to ask you for sanctuary. Kushina replied. What? Nearly every Kumonin in the room shouted after hearing this. To be exactly, we came to ask you for sanctuary for my son, Naruto. Kushina explained further. Wait a minute, why should a kunoichi like you, who by the way is known for hating Kumo, asking said village to protect her son? I asked in disbelief. Because I'm a mother and willing to forget and forgive the past for the sake of my baby. And because I believe Kumo will be the safer place for Naruto to grow up. That's why Kakashi and I faked ours and Naruto's death and left Konoha. Kushina said with a pained expression. Why should you do something like that? Raisin asked, not believing a word Kushina said. The reason is, most of Konoha wish for the death of my son. Kushina answered with a furious expression. And why should they do something like that? The last time I checked you were a hailed kunoichi of Konoha. I asked. Because my son's birthday is the 10th October and he was born a bit more than a year ago. Kushina answered. Suddenly Raisin had an idea what she was talking about. You mean he is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi? That's right, Kushina's shocking answer could be heard, stunning everyone. Ha! So much about Konoha being the noblest and most peaceful of the hidden villages, and so much about their talks about acceptance and comradeship now. A scoffed with disgust in his voice, what a bunch of hypocrites. After A said that many of the shinobis in the room nodded in agreement or showed different signs of agreement. After clearing his throat to gain everyone's attention again, Raisin continued the talk where A's comment interrupted it. Am I right with the assumption that the father of this boy is Minato Namikaze? Raisin asked further. At hearing this, Kushina panicked slightly. Where do you know that from? After her reaction practically answered his question, Raisin could be seen grinning. Well, you and Minato Namikaze were known to be close. Very close in fact. And the boy has blonde hair and you are accompanied by the man's former students. It's not really that hard to figure it out. And you just confirmed it. What would you do now, after knowing this, asked Kushina while prepared herself to fight if necessary to protect her child. A good question. But let me ask you something in return. Why did you come to Kumogakure of all places? Why do you risk not only your lives, but also the future of your child by simply coming here? Why do you have such trust in my village after your experiences with it in the past? And if we're already at it? Assumed you tell us the truth. Why should we trust you and further let you stay in Kumo? You defected your village. How can we trust you to not do the same again? Raisin asked while searching for any sign of a lie. After she heard Raisin's questions, Kushina's expression became utterly serious while sitting straight and looking fearlessly into Raisin's eyes. Then she replied with a dead serious voice. To answer your questions. Why I trust Kumo. As I said before, for my son I'm willing to let the past be the past and forget about it. Why did we come to Kumo? As much I hate it, my son is a Jinchuriki and further the son of me and Minato, while I, Rin and Kakashi are rather famous as shinobis. That means we cannot simply start a new life anywhere, but instead have to look for a place that can defend itself against someone as strong as Konoha. That leaves only the 4 major hidden villages besides Konoha for us to went for, and with Sunagakure no Sato, the village hidden in the sand, being allied with Konoha. The Wagakure no Sato, the village hidden in the rocks, hating everything linked to Minato with passion because of the defeat they received by him in the last war, and would most likely kill me and Naruto for being Minato's wife and son and Rin and Kakashi for being his students, and the sand-aimed Tsuchikage, third Earth Shadow, is not known for easily forget a grudge once he hold against someone. And lastly Kurigakure no Sato, the village hidden in the mist, is on the brink of a civil war because of the so-called bloodline purge, which was started by the Yonde Mizukage, fourth water shadow, less than 2 years ago, and is actually one big witch hunt after persons who possess Kekkei Genkai, bloodline limits. This leaves Kumogakure as the only logical option for us. Kumo also possessed 2 Bijuas, while the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi, 8 Tails, your adopted son Killer Bee, is called the perfect Jinchuriki because he completely mastered and is able to control his Bijuu's power, which means he can use his Bijuu's power without the risk to lose control of himself or the Hachibi taking over. It's also said that he's quite respected by Kumo's shinobis and even its civilians. This gained Kumo the reputation as the Jinchuriki friendliest amongst the hidden villages. This also means B could help my son by teaching Naruto how to live with the Kyuubi and don't lose himself to its power, as he managed doing the same with the Hachibi, which is the second strongest Bijuu after the Kyuubi. And if Kumo already learned to respect B and see him as the human he is, they can surely do the same with Naruto. Or at least do something most of Konoha refused to do from the beginning. Give him the chance to prove that he isn't the demon he contains. Also a reason why you should let Naruto stay at Kumo is, you would gain 3 rather powerful shinobi additionally to a new Jinchuriki, and also the chance for 2 new clans settling in Kumo, as I'm the last living member of the leading family of the Uzumaki clan, and as such the clan head, while Naruto is the sole heir, and should he decide to do it, he could rebuild the Uzumaki clan here in Kumo. This would mean, Kumo would eventually get a clan of sealmasters, as I'm in possession of most of my clan's scrolls, books and artifacts that were left behind after the destruction of Uzushiogakure, because they were protected with seals, only an Uzumaki could break, and I am an Uzumaki sealmaster myself, which means I'm able to teach my son and others that may show interest or promise in Kenjutsu. I'm also in the possession of all scrolls from Minato that endured the Kyuubi's attack, but they are only for Naruto as soon he is old enough. With Kakashi you would gain the last living member and clan head of the Hada clan which, even though being a rather small clan and not as known to, still produced many powerful shinobis. And for your question how you can trust us after we left our home village, I reassure you, as long as you guarantee Naruto's safety and well-being, I as well as Rin and Kakashi, swear on everything that is important to us to acknowledge you as our leader and follow your orders until death and swear utter loyalty to Kumo. After finishing her speech Kushina anxiously looked at Raisin, who showed an unreadable expression. After thinking for the longest 5 minutes in the lives of the 3 ex-Konoha shinobi, Raisin looked around to ensure everyone paid attention to what he was about to say, and then made his announcement. I will let you, your son and the other 2 stay. I also offer you all a position as shinobis of Kumogakure. Further I will adopt your son, Naruto, as my 3rd son. Raisin said with a dead serious voice. After hearing this, the sound from jaws hitting the floor could be heard, while lay besides his father was laughing his ass off as he expected something like this from his father. May I ask why you are doing this? Kushina asked Raisin in a tone that showed her being suspicious about how the Raikage reacted. Well that's easy. First I owe Minato Namikaze the lives of my 2 sons, as he spared them in the last war, besides defeating them and knowing B's talent and status as a Jinchuriki. Second, I loathe how Jinchuriki normally are treated, and finally, because I hope for your son to grow up together with my grandniece who is the Jinchuriki of the Nibi no Bakaneko, 2-tailed monster cat, and for them becoming friends. I also could detect no lies in your story and your eyes when you were talking, so I decide to trust you. Don't let me regret this decision. Raisin stated with a small smile and a small threat in the last part to underline how serious he was. But why would you offer to adopt Naruto-kun? Rin could be heard asking. After hearing this, Raisin looked at the teen and answered with a grin, because if I adopt him, I will be able to protect him even from people within the village, and I can train him myself, and by my 2 sons without someone be able to say that I'm favoring someone as it isn't favoring if a father trains his own son, isn't it? Do you accept my offer? I would be honored and would stand forever in your department if you could do that for my Sachi-kun, answered a happy Kushina. After that, Kushina stood up, went over to Rin, took Naruto and went back to Raisin. Suddenly Naruto awakened from being carried around and opened his eyes. As soon as he saw his mother, the little boy began to smile at her, which caused even the 2 hardasses Raisin and A to admire the boy for being so cute. When Kushina reached Raisin, she gave her son to him. Naruto seemed not to be scared by the giant man even in the slightest and watched him with big blue eyes. Good thought, the Raikage humorously, doesn't scare easy. Make for a good shinobi he will. Like his father's. But couldn't help himself but smile at the sight of his father with a small boy, no his little brother in his arms. Then Raisin took out kunai, what causes Kushina to tense for a moment until she realized that the Raikage didn't intend to hurt Naruto and carefully cut into Naruto's right hand and make a bleeding wound. Surprisingly, the little boy didn't even flinch when the kunai cuts him. After that, Raisin activates his Yugakizuki, Hell Stab, and pricks his finger as a knife would not be able to even scratch it. Then he carefully pressed his finger on the wound at Naruto's hand. What exactly is the Raikage doing? Asked a confused Kakashi Kushina, who seems to know what this was all about. He mixes his blood with Naruto's and so adopt him into his clan. There is even a chance that Naruto will inherit the Sandaime Raikages and the Itsuki clan's special Kekkei Genkai and so being able to learn their clan jutsus. It's an old practice and nearly was forgotten over the years because most clans are fanatic to keep the blood pure. Kushina explained. Suddenly something unexpected happened. Naruto's eyes changed. Well, they still had sky bluer eyes, but the sclery became black like raisins. This caused some surprised gasps from the Kumo shinobi, and even Raisin and A looked surprised, while Kushina, Rin and Kakashi were rather confused by their reactions, but decide to file away their questions for later, as it couldn't be something too bad, because they saw everyone gaining their composure again after a few seconds. From now on you will be known by everyone as Naruto Yutsuki Uzumaki. Raisin said, which caused A and the Kumo shinobi to cheer, Naruto to giggle, and Kushina to cry from relief. Suddenly the office door slammed open and a male in his late teens walked into the room. He had dark skin and a muscular build, as well as combed back blonde hair. On his right shoulder he has a tattoo of the kanji for iron, D Tetsu, and on his left cheek he has a tattoo of a bull's horn. He wore oval-shaped sunglasses and a white-colored bandana-styled forehead protector. He also had his village's standard one strap over one shoulder flak jacket and a long red rope belt tied around his waist, the standard Kumo hand and shin guards, shinobi sandals, and a white scarf around his neck, and he carried 7 swords on his back. This was the one and only Killer Bee, adopted son of Raisin and A's younger brother. Ops, big bro. What's up no? He asked rapped badly, what caused A to groan and Raisin to laugh, as he sometimes found B's rapping rather entertaining. Yo, B, come here and say hello to your little brother, Naruto. Without missing a beat, B sauntered through the office up to the boy in blankets and stuck his fist in front of him. Yo, what's up little bro, I'm feeling this will be a big show. Raisin continued, and this is Naruto's mother Kushina. She and Naruto will live with us and Yugito from this day on. After hearing this, B turned around, saw Kushina and suddenly said what a bra. As soon as he said this, Kushina gained a rather large tick mark on her temple and you could hear A roaring, B, get your eyes up here now. Have some respect for Uzumaki-san. At seeing his brother anger, B tried to excuse himself with the rather poor chosen words, oh no bro. I promise you I meant no offense. It's just that this woman's jugs definitely erg. B was hit straight in the face by the fist of an extreme angry Kushina Uzumaki and was sent flying into the next wall. Forgive B. He has sometimes the worst manners you can think about, but he doesn't mean it like that. A said and in the effect calming Kushina down and save B from a beating from hell. I hope he will remember this and not start this again. And who is this Yugito you talked about? She's my grandniece I mentioned earlier and the Nibis Jinchuriki, and she is just around 4 months older than Naruto. I hope that Naruto and Yugito will grow up together as friends, because even if Jinchurikis are here treated better than in other places, they still have troubles to find friends. I also somewhat hope that you will act as some kind of a mother figure for her, because her only remaining family members are me, A, B, and now you and Naruto, Raisin said. Kushina on the other hand was interested in the thought of having a daughter too, so she took Naruto in her arms and asked him, what do you think, Naruto-kun? Should we go and meet little Yugito-chan? After which he giggled, what Kushina did took as a yes. If you want, I will bring you to her and at the same time show you where you will be living from now on. Offers after which he, Kushina, Naruto, Rin, Kakashi and B left. Seeing them left his office, Raisin chuckled and thought, it seems that our life has suddenly become a lot more interesting. I'm looking forward to see Naruto grow up and see how he affects Kumo. Itsuki clan compound, 7 hours later. Currently Kushina was standing at the side of a baby bed and fight the urge to squeal kawaii. Because of the sight before her. Naruto and Yugito liked each other from the first moment on, and after playing together for some time, they were sleeping right now and snuggled together. After some last glances, she whispered, that's right. We have finally have a home where I not have to fear you being assassinated, my little Naruto. Sleep well my baby and you too little Yugito-chan. After that she left the room and went to sleep too. Raikage office, a week after arriving in Kumo. Currently, Raisin was sitting in his office together with Kushina, Rin and Kakashi. It was a week since they arrived in Kumo, and Raisin believed it was time to discuss their future with them. Well, it's a week since you arrived here in Kumo. How do you like it? Raisin asked. It's very nice. In fact, it's much better than I ever hoped for. Your clan treats Naruto and me as if we were born into it. And B are also really kind, even though B often annoys the hell out of me, Kushina answered with a smile. After she said that, Raisin laughed and replied. Yeah. I'm sorry for that, but that's B for you. He raps non-stop and most of the time not good too, neither me nor A could make him stop, but you should know that's B's way to deal how people acts about Jinchurikis. What do you mean? I thought Kumo is the only village that accepts Jinchuriki. Kushina asked with confusion. That's half true. You see, because of his actions in the Third Great Ninja War and him being able to completely control the Hachibi, 8 Tails, most people respect him but still be afraid that one day he will lose control like all the other before him. That's also one of the 2 reasons why I wanted Yugito to grow up with Naruto, because they will have it hard to make friends, even if they will be better treated than in other villages. At least they don't have to fear someone attack them, because they are both part of my family. He explained. When she heard this, the look in Kushina's eye became sad, and she said so even here they let their fear control them. That's just stupid. Well, at least the 2 of them have the chance to become accepted one day. By the way, what's the other reason why you want them to grow up together? That's easy to explain. As you know, Yugito is my grandniece. Unfortunately her mother and her father died not long ago, and now A, B and myself are her last remaining relatives, and we are not exactly optimal to replace a mother. She needs a mother figure, and I hope you would become that for her. He replied. I remember it. You've said something like this a week ago. Well, I would really like to be a mother for her, because I always wanted a daughter too. And she already grew onto me. A smiling Kushina replied. I'm pleased to hear that. What's with you two? Raisin turns to Rin and Kakashi. I miss the forest of Konoha a bit, but besides that I like it. Your clan is very friendly, even though they are a bit harsh sometimes. Kakashi answered with an eye smile. I feel exactly like Kakashi. And it's also nice to see Naruto-kun being happy and how he plays with Yugito-chan. Rin continued with a bright smile. That's my next question. How do the 2 of them get along? From what I've seen they get along very well, but because of my damned paperwork, I see them not as much as you. A curious Raisin asked while cursing the papers from hell. On hearing his question, a smile that only a mother could have appeared on Kushina's face while she answered. They get along very well, in fact they are nearly inseparable and begin to cry if we separate them. They do everything together. We even have to let them sleep together in the same bed or they will cry the whole clan compound together. Yugito also have showed Naruto how to crawl around. When he heard this, Raisin smirked at the thought of the 2 little children making such a ruckus. He also couldn't help than be pleased how well his idea worked. Seeing Raisin smirk, Kushina decided to tease him a bit. By the way, didn't you say you found a way to decrease your paperwork? Didn't you hire this girl Mabui as your secretary? She get her answer in form of a groan and a glaring Raisin after seeing her grin. I swear, you're proving the rumor that Uzumakas are mean. Yes, I hired her and it helped, but I still have the feeling this damned paper's double when I'm not watching. This of course caused the other 3 laugh and the hidden Ambus to snicker. After listening them laugh about his misery for a few minutes, Raisin decided to get back to the reason he called them today. With an absolute serious expression he talked again, enough with the fun. I've called you for a serious reason today. What reason? A curious Kakashi asked. To inform you what will happen next and to decide your future together with you. Came the answer, and immediately everyone became silent and listened to him. As I said, if you wish I will let you become Shinobis of Kumo, but for that I need to know your techniques, specialities, etc., etc. Raisin informed them, I think you all wish to stay Shinobis. As answer all of them nodded and Rin spoke. Well then, I begin. Back in Konoha I was a Chunin with low jounin skills. I'm an average skilled Iram nin, medic ninja, and that means I have very good chakra control, but according on Tsunade-sama, I have much talent to become very skilled in the future. I know techniques like the Shimsen Jutsu, mystical palm technique, and the Chakura no Mesu, chakra scalpel, and I'm skilled with senbons, and in both make and use poison, and also detect and cure them, and have a distinct knowledge about medicinal herbs. While I'm not a front fighter, I still have adequate Taijutsu, body techniques, skills and good Jinjutsu, illusionary techniques, skills. I have a primary nature affinity for water and a secondary one for fire. I also know some basic Suiton, water release, and Kaiten, fire release, jutsus. When she finished, Raisin looked very pleased and said, "You're an Iramnin. That's good. Kumo has not enough Iramnin and even less skilled or well-trained ones. Depending on what you wish, you could work in the hospital and train students, or maybe you want to be on the same team as your friend. By the way, what are your skills, boy?" I'm an ex-Anbu and have mid to high Jounin skills. I have rather large chakra reserves, I'm very adept in using Taijutsu and are really fast and persistent, and I have good Kenjutsu, sword technique, skills. Well, I don't use it much, I have proficient Jinjutsu skills. But my true strength is ninjutsu, ninja techniques. My primary nature affinity is lightning, and I can also use the other 4 nature affinities to a certain degree, but still have to master them. In my left eye socket I have a full matured Sharingan implanted, which I've mastered to a point where I can use it efficiently in a fight. I also have decent knowledge in Kenjutsu, and I'm also renowned for my tracking abilities. I also have a better sense of smell than some Inyazuka, are skilled in trap making, medical, survival, escapism, stealth, subterfuge, and assassination. And I also have signed the Haddock summoning contract which summons Ninken, ninja dogs, Kakashi explained. Interesting. With your assassination skills you could join the Bolt Anbu, but I think with your tracking skills and having a summoning contract for ninja dogs, you would also make a good shock Anbu. I think shock would be better because you shouldn't be seen outside Kaminari no Kuni, Lightning Country, anytime soon. As I said, girl, if you wish, you can be on the same team as him or become a medic at the hospital. Raisin offered. Excuse me, Raikage-sama. But what are shock Anbu and Bolt Anbu? Do you have different Anbu divisions? Asked Rin. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that this says nothing to you. To answer your question, yes, we have more than one Anbu division. I will roughly explain it to you. First we have the Flash Anbu. They are Kumo's T&I force and also responsible for espionage and most important counter-espionage. Then we have Bolt Anbu. They are Kumo's assassins and infiltrators. They wear white animal masks with black marking and shapes, black and grey armor, arm guards, and a signature white lightning bolt on right arm. Most of them carry katanas on their backs as well as crossbows or longbows and also a small crossbow for poison darts on their belts. They take only B and S rank missions. They works in conjunction with Flash where the Flash division would find and give any info on a Bolt member target while the Bolt division would gather intel from enemy strongholds and bases for the Flash division. Next we have the Shock Anbu. Their responsibilities mainly involve security where they were in charge of protecting the village, as well as helping to guard the borders of Kumo and Kaminari, no Kuni, Lightning Country, from enemy shinobis and spies. They also act as Kumo's Oinin, Hunter Ninja, division, where they would track down and find any missing nins from Kumo. They wear yellow animal masks with black marking and shapes, black and grey armor, arm guards, and a signature yellow lightning bolt on right arm. Most of them carry katanas or tantos as well as longbows. They take B and S rank missions, but almost never leave the country besides for Moinin missions. And last but not least, we have the Storm Anbu, so to say the Anbus of the Anbus. Their responsibilities are to protect and serve the Raikage and protect the village and carry out high-risk and class missions. They wear blue animal masks with black marking and shapes, black and grey armor, arm guards, and a signature blue lightning bolt on right arm and carry their own specific weapons. They only take A, S and SS rank missions. Raisin explained to them. Wow, I'm impressed. It seems Kumo has improved, the Anbu Kushina admit with an impressed expression, while Rin and Kakashi only nods to their words. After that Raisin continued, as I said earlier, I would Kakashi like to be in the Shock Anbu division, while Rin can't choose. I would like to be on the same unit as Kakashi, please. We work together since our Genin days and have good teamwork, Rin said. Well then, be it so. From today on you two will be members of the Shock Anbu. But now to you, Kushina. Raisin said while looking at the reed. Kushina realized what he wanted her to do and began to explain her own skills. I'm an ex-Anbu with high Jounin skills and cage level chakra reserves. I'm extreme good in Kenjutsu, Taijutsu and Kenjutsu. To be honest, I'm a Uzumaki seal master of nearly the highest grade. My primary nature affinities are wind and water, but most of my elemental ninjutsus involve my sword. I'm also able to use the Uzumaki clan special hiding Kenjutsu. Konfsa, secret sealing technique. Adamantine sealing chains. I'm also a decent censor. Raisin looked at her and said, Kushina, for you I have something special in mind. I would like you to become a special Anbu. Kushina looked very confused. What the hell is a special Anbu? To be honest, I made that up a minute ago. Raisin grinned sheepishly because Anbu are anonym, but we need you to become famous without Konoha be able to identify you. So I came up with the idea to make you an Anbu, but with a unique mask and armament, so that you can be easily recognized and still be unknown outside of Kumo. I also already have an idea under which name you will be known outside of Kumo. You know, during the Third Great Shinobi War some of my shinobi had nickname for you, which nobody outside of Kumo knows. They called you Shinku Shinigami, Crimson Death God. I think it would be fitting to call you the Shinku Shinigami no Kumo, the Crimson Death God of Kumo. This actually doesn't sound bad. Kushina grinned. Well now then to the next theme. Kakashi, Rin, would you like to stay at the Itsuki clan compound like Kushina and Naruto, or would you like to take a department on your own? Raisin asked with a grin from ear to ear, while Kushina nearly fell to the chair from laughing after seeing the faces of Kakashi and Rin, suddenly went beet red at Raisin's comment. Besides the fact they tried to hide it from others, it was well known for the people around them that they have the hots for each other and that they recently became a couple, something Kushina loved to tease them about. We would all like to have an apartment on our own, stuttered a highly embarrassed Kakashi, while Rin's blush went to shades that could embarrass a certain Hyuga heiress. After a few minutes of making fun about the embarrassed couple, Raisin remembered something. Kushina, I nearly forgot it, but I have to announce the presence of you four and your identities to the village. Much to everyone's surprise, Kushina's expression went suddenly to anxiety. Raisin-san, do you really have to announce it? She asked. Yeah, why? What's the problem? A curious Raisin asked. Kushina sighed and began to speak, it seems I don't have much of a choice. I will explain it to you, and Rin and Kakashi please listen too. It involves you as well. After seeing everyone was listening, Kushina continued, well Raisin-san, what I'm about to tell you is one of Konoha's most trusted secrets. Contrary to the common belief, the Kyuubi didn't appear out of nowhere when he attacked the village. In fact, there have been 2 Jinchurikis before Naruto. What? Raisin shouted in disbelief. It's true. And I was the one before Naruto. Kushina said. That's impossible. A Jinchuriki dies if someone extract his Biju. And you are alive, Raisin replied, still not believing her. I'm not sure myself, but I think I live because I'm an Uzumaki. As you may know, pregnancy is something very dangerous to a female Jinchuriki because it weakens the seal to a point that during birth a Biju could escape. Surely all of you ask yourself now how this could happen with a seal master like Minato being there. That's what almost no one knows. Right after Naruto's birth we were attacked by a stranger with a mask that covered his whole face and only showed his right eye, a Sharingan. He managed it to force Minato to use his Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, to save Naruto, and while Minato was away, he broke the seal, released the Kyuubi, and somehow forced it under his control. Rin, Kakashi, you know this, but I've never told you that when the attacker went into the seal, I recognized his chakra signature. It was Obito. At hearing this, both Kakashi and Rin looked both extremely shocked, and Kakashi said impossible. Becoming curious, Raisin asked, who is this Obito, and why is it impossible that it could be him? Obito was the 3rd member of our Genin team. His name is Obito Uchiha, and I have received my Sharingan from him. We have thought he died in the 3rd Great Ninja War in a battle with Iwa. Kakashi explained with a grim expression. Kushina sighed, I know it's hard to believe, and I would like nothing more than be wrong, but I'm 100% sure it was him. But why would he do something like that? Rin asked with tears in her eyes. I don't know, but somehow he has survived and come to hate Konoha, and thus a sad Kushina replied. More than that, I'm sure he is somehow connected to a newly formed organization Jiraiya told me about 2 months ago, which is entirely made out of S-rank Nukenin, rogue ninja missing ninja, called Akatsuki, Dawn, who are after the Jinchuriki, or to be more specific their Bijuus. An organization of S-rank Nukenin who are after the Bijuus, are you sure? Raisin asked with a concerned expression. Yes, I am. But the organization is highly secretive, so Jiraiya could only find out that his former teammate Orochimaru is a part of them and that they for now focusing on making money and recruit more member, which means they won't come after the Jinchuriki for years. But they are also the reason I'm so worried that Naruto's Jinchuriki status is revealed, Kushina said with a lot of concern in her voice. Damn, that sounds like trouble. Raisin cursed, but then tried to cheer her up. About your son, you don't have to worry that some infos leaks out of the village. Why? It's possible they have spies here in Kumo, together with the other villages too. Replied Kushina. No, they don't, Raisin said with a I know something you don't know look in his eyes. After hearing this, Kushina, Rin and Kakashi had imaginary question marks floating above their heads until Raisin continued, "You see, after the last war one had some ideas how to reinforce Kumo, so Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni, Lightning Country, have sealed their borders as inconspicuous as possible since then. To prevent infos we want to stay secrets leaking out of the country and spies sneaking into it. You were lucky you don't try to sneak into the country because if the patrol would have thought you were spies, they would have attacked. That's a bit implausible that a country, even more as it is one of the 5 great shinobi nations, seal its borders without any of the other shinobi nations notice it," replied a skeptic Kakashi. "Boy, let me ask you something. When was the last time you've heard news from Kumo that came from inside the country?" asked an amused Raisin. Kushina, Rin and Kakashi tried to remember something, but realized that what Raisin said had to be true because since the end of the war, they really have heard nothing from Kumo besides some clashings on missions. Raisin grinned when they said that to him and then continued with some pride, "I can guarantee you that Kumo has took care of all spies. Because of that I have no problems to announce your presence. I will announce your presence and names to the whole village and that Naruto is my son and that Kushina is his mother and that both are now part of my family. The true identity from all of you and Naruto's Jinchuriki status will only be known by the most important from the shinobi side for now and I will make it clear for them that this is a top secret information. That Naruto is Minato Namikaze's son will stay a secret until the village is ready for this info or needed. Is this okay for you?" "It is okay. I'm eternally thankful for everything you have done for us." Kushina thanked him. "Good. There is one more thing I would like to discuss with you. I thought to tell Naruto and Yugito the truth about them being Jinchurikis the day after Naruto's 5th birthday and at the same time starting then to train them at the same age most clan children starts to train. I plan to have them trained by you 3, myself, and B." Raisin said. After thinking a moment Kushina agreed, "I agree with it. It seems like a good idea that they start train early to become strong because they will have to be strong because at least they have the Akatsukas going after them." Raisin said, "I suddenly remembered something I want to ask you. Why did you and the other Kumo shinobi freak out back then when the sclery of Naruto's eyes turned black back at the blood adoption ceremony? We were surprised because in the Itsuki clan are these black scleries a sign that someone inherited the strongest version of our bloodline, which means a superhuman body and great mastery of Raiten, lightning release, which are both a lot stronger than usual. That means Naruto will most likely surpass my own son A and maybe even me in mastering our clan's jutsus. It's unheard that someone who was adopted into a clan receives such a strong version of its bloodline, that's why we were this surprised." Raisin explained. "So the change of my son's eyes are a good sign." Raisin nodded and then said to them, "Well that's all for now. I will make the announcement today and you will be reinstated as Kumo Shinobis by the end of the week. Kushina, you will start low because you have to take care of Yugito and Naruto." The 3 of them nodded, stood up and left the office. After they left, Raisin continued with his paperwork while growling and thinking to himself, "I could swear, this damned paper stacks just doubled their height while I didn't look." When Raisin announced the news, there were mixed emotions in Kumo. The civilians were excited about the news that the Sandaime Raikage had another son. Later in a meeting with the Shinobi Council and all important shinobis, when Raisin revealed the whole truth about Naruto, Kushina, Rin and Kakashi, most of them were pleased about the info that 3 powerful shinobi, who were quite famous, as well as the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, joined Kumo's forces. But like in every other of the great villages, there were some that held on their grudges or simply disliked Jinchurikis. Because of that, Raisin made it extra clear that Naruto and Kushina now were a part of his family and Rin and Kakashi were also in a way a part of it. He also made sure that all of them understood that it would be better for their health when this knowledge stayed a secret and under no circumstances is allowed to be known outside of Kumo. He made that by flooding the room with killing intent and threatened them to personally rip them apart limb after limb with his bare hands should they ever let it leak out. The result? All of them, even the one that wanted revenge on Kushina, Rin or Kakashi, mostly Kushina, for something they did as Konoha in or despised Naruto for being a Jinchuriki, would sooner committing seppuku, ritual suicide, than risking to be the target of the wrath of their Kage, because they all know the Sandaime Raikage would challenge and conquer heaven and hell for his family, friends and Kumo and they have seen in the past what happens to fools that threaten one of the former. The most impressive example was the one when he fought 10,000 enemies to let his comrades escape and call for reinforcements and killed at least 8,000 of them in a fight that lasted 3 whole days and nights until Kumo's reinforcements arrived and the enemy was forced to retreat because they were completely exhausted. This event was also the reason for Raisin to be renowned by Kumo's citizens to be the greatest Raikage the village has ever had. Because they all knew that and respected and feared their Raikage, they all swore themselves to made it unequivocally clear to their clan members family members to never even think about spill this information to someone. As a result of Raisin's action, the whole thing happened relatively quiet and soon Naruto, Kushina, Rin and Kakashi were seen by the people as if they were born in Kumo. Itsuki clan compound, 1 year later. Currently, Kushina kneeled on the ground of the big living room in the house of Raisin, who was the Itsuki clan head, in the Itsuki clan compound, and watched Naruto and Yugito play with their favorite stuffed animals. An orange fox with 9 tails and a blue cat with 2 tails. Unbeknown to everyone, in Naruto's seal, the Kyuubi cringed and fought the urge to bang his head against the wall of his prison because of the extreme humiliation, in his view, of the choice of his host's favorite stuffed animal. He was the feared Kikbi no Imko, 9-tailed demon fox, the strongest of all bijuous-tailed beasts, the bane of humanity. But now he was trapped in a little human boy. His favorite stuffed animal had an extreme similarity with him, Kyuubi. He felt like crying. In Yugito's seal, the Nibi no Bakaneko, 2-tailed monster cat, also was a bit peeved that her host's favorite stuffed animal looked like her, Nibi, but at the same time she was a bit touched by it. Ever since, the humans hated and feared her and the other bijuous and only saw them as monsters, not as beings with feelings. But now, this little girl played with a little Nibi look-alike and hugged it like the most precious thing in the world. It made her, Nibi, feel wanted, loved and accepted. The Nibi couldn't help but smile and silently vowed to herself to give this Jinchuriki a chance and at least try to work with the girl. Right now, Kushina thought about how well Naruto and Yugito were growing. They slept during the whole night almost ever, much to hers and the other residents of this house, Raisin and Killer Bee, relief. Ever since the two of them learned to crawl and walk, they had to watch them all the time because of their natural curiosity. They even climbed bookshelves if there was something on it they found interesting. Yugito had recently begun to talk, which caused Kushina nearly go mad because of joy when Yugito called her Kachan for the first time. "Come on Naruto-kun, say Kachan. You can do it. Say Kachan." Kushina prodded. Naruto sat in front of her as she was trying to get Naruto to talk, but Naruto only giggled and went back to play with stuffed animal. Like the rest of the week until now, Naruto refused to talk besides from babbling. Suddenly voices could be heard outside of the room and Kushina listened until she recognized them as the voices of A and B. It sounds like A is scolding B once again for his stupid rapping. Kushina thought with an amused smirk. Then the door opened and A and B entered while still arguing. "Said it 1,000 times before and I will say it again. Your so-called art is nothing but one hell of an annoyance." A finished what he was saying before he entered the room. "Ouch bro, you shattering my self-confidence like glass. Come on, stop being such an ass." B rapped his answer. When A heard B call him an ass, he was about to punish him with his feared technique in Kerm, Iron Claw, but then Kushina decided to intervene because of the two children in the room. "Listen here you two, ass." All three froze with wide eyes and slowly turned their heads to Naruto who was sitting next to Yugito on the ground and both were giggling. Naruto was waving his arms around at the faces the three adults made, thoroughly enjoying the new funny faces they were looking at him with. "Ass." He repeated, this time they noticed the lisp that carried with the word, as he couldn't properly make the S sound right yet. Enter Bleach hollowed. Kushina's eye twitched as her face stayed one of utter shock. His first word is that by this time, both A and B recovered from their shock and decided it would be better for their health if they vanish because Kushina began radiating a murderous aura. They both vanished in a shunshin, body flicker. Especially B suddenly couldn't get away far enough from Kushina. Raikage office, same time. Raisin had just now finished his paperwork in a rather exhausting morning and now planned to go home for lunch as suddenly a massive killing intent washed over the village. Before anybody could wonder what was going on, it was followed by an equally terrifying voice. "Damn you to the deepest hell you fucking idiot. B get your ass here now. I will fucking kill you. Maybe I shouldn't eat my lunch at home today." Raisin murmured, unable to shake the feeling that his home currently was ground zero. Then Bleach hollowed. What in Kami's godforsaken name did B this time to piss Kushina this much? He muttered to himself. Suddenly A appeared in a shunshin, body flicker, before his father and said, "Well, I can tell you that, old man." "Then do it. Explain, what happened?" Raisin growled. As you surely know, Kushina tried to teach Naruto to talk for days now, without success. He replied and looked at his father, and today Naruto spoke his first word. "And? Why would that be a bad thing?" he asked, thoroughly confused. Weren't people happy when a baby learns its first word? He remembered his late wife was ecstatic for days when A had said his first word and he also remembered how happy Kushina was when Yugito called her Kachan for the first time. "It's a word he learned from B." A answered. "And what word did he teach the boy?" Raisin asked. Suddenly he had a bad feeling about this. "Don't tell me he." "The word is ass," A said. Raisin suddenly felt pity for his sometimes not so bright second son. "Don't say me." He decided to rap in front of Naruto and so accidentally teach him this word. Beside, that's exactly what happened. He annoyed me once again, so I said him his rapping is no art but an annoyance. Well, his reply contained the word ass most likely only because it rhymed itself to his former sentence. Raisin face palmed and groaned, "Kami have mercy with B because Kushina will not." Only nodded his answer. A loved his little brother and would even die for him, even though B often annoys the hell out of him and was the cause for many headaches of him. But right now for nothing in this world A would consider to switch places with B at the moment. After that, Raisin and A both came to the conclusion that the Raikage mansion was not going to be a safe place for the foreseeable future. They went into the village and each rented out a hotel room for a week, hoping Kushina would calm down until then. Kumagakure, Yutsuki clan compound, 3.5 years after Kyuubi attack. The Yutsuki compound was one of the bigger compounds in Kumo and built into a mountain near the Raikage mountain like an eyrie. Sitting in the dining room of the house of the clan leader, Raisin was eating his breakfast before he again had to go to his office and fight the papers from hell. While he was eating, he thought back about how his life had changed in the past 2 years. After the incident with Naruto learning his first word from B, Kushina was extremely angry and went to hunt down B. Although B tried to hide from her, it didn't really help him much because he forgot that Kushina was a censor and that he as a Jinchuriki did have a rather large and distinctive chakra signature. In the end it didn't took Kushina very long to find him and then B received the beating of his life by the hands of the angry mother. The only thing that saved B and everyone else in the Yutsuki compound from the continued wrath of Kushina was that when she returned to the compound after beating B, as soon she entered the living room Naruto crawled to her and greeted her with "Kachan." This caused her anger to disappear immediately while she began swoon over the combined cuteness from Naruto and Yugito. At remembering this Raisin chuckled because he also remembered that ever since then, B feared Kushina to a point where he would avoid to annoy her too much at all cost and even decreased his rapping to a point where he mostly only did it when he was greatly angered, upset, happy, disturbed or sad, much to the relief of A and the Hachibi, 8 tails. This effectively made Kushina the third person in Kumo whose orders B actually would obey. The other two being Raisin and A. Soon after that, Rin and Kakashi took an apartment on their own and also soon became respected members of the Shakanbu division and Kumo's shinobi forces. Rin also worked part-time as a medic at Kumo's hospital and as well helped to train genin who were interested to become Iram Nin, medic ninja. Kakashi and Rin also both often visited Kushina, Yugito and Naruto to play with the children or watch them when Kushina was on a mission. Because of Rin and Kakashi being so often around Yugito and Naruto, they started to consider them, Rin and Kakashi, as their older siblings, like they did it with A and B, and also started to call them Ni-chan and Nai-san as soon as they learned the right words. This caused all four of them, Rin, Kakashi, B and even A, to be extremely proud that the two young Jinchuriki saw them as their siblings. Besides that, the life for himself, Raisin, as well as all the other peoples around the two young blonde Jinchurikis, was rather pleasant and enjoyable, as well as very interesting for the last 2 years, because both of them were bundles of joy with nearly endless stamina. They both grew up really fast to a point where they were rather large for their age. Because of their similar appearance, someone who didn't know them would mistake them as siblings, maybe even twins, as the only differences, besides their gender, were their hair and eye colors, as Yugito had dirty blonde hair and jade green eyes, while Naruto had bright sun-kissed blonde hair and deep blue eyes. They still were inseparable and did nearly everything together. They were also very curious and smart as they learned things really fast. They also had a knack for getting into trouble, for example by climbing trees. On one of these occasions they found out that Yugito would land always on her feet or on all fours like a cat because she fell out of the tree she was climbing at the moment. This nearly caused Kushina, Raisin, and B who witnessed this to have a heart attack altogether. Yugito has also recently gained some more cat-like features where her eyes became like the one of a cat, which means her pupils became slitted and she also became able to see in the dark where her eyes would also gleam like the ones of a cat and her hearing became much more sensitive. While Raisin, Kushina and A became greatly worried about this, B reassured them that this was completely normal for a Jinchuriki to gain some traits of the Bijuu that is sealed inside them. After they found out about Yugito's enhanced senses they tested Naruto's too and found out that he was also beginning to develop an enhanced sense of smell and enhanced hearing, as well as some kind of night vision. All in all, Naruto and Yugito both had become the pride and joy of the whole Raikage family, including Kushina and the Itsuki clan, who all greatly loved the two. The two young blondes also had all these people completely wrapped around their fingers and they knew it. Kushina, A, Raisin and to some extent B were also highly protective of our two favorite blondes against anyone who had something against Jinchurikis and it soon became an unwritten law in Kumo to not insult the two in front of Kushina, A, Raisin and B because the first three always did beat the crap out everyone while, depending on the insults, sometimes even B would made sure that those who were foolish enough to speak their thoughts out loud weren't able to eat solid food for some time. Lately Yugito and Naruto also both started to develop a rather mischievous and prank-loving side, much to everyone's horror except from Kushina, who, after she realized this, cried tears of joy and started boasting about how proud she was that both her son as well as her adopted daughter took after her and were about to become talented prankster. At this thought Raisin sighed deeply because he already knew from the stories he heard from Rin and Kakashi about how Kushina seemingly used to be as a child that if Yugito and Naruto become only half as bad as her, Kushina, this would mean a lot of extra paperwork and headaches for him, Raisin, in the near future. Raisin then decided to focus on more pleasant thoughts. Soon a large grin formed itself on his face when he came to think about the most recent developments concerning his oldest son ever since Kushina and Naruto joined Kumo. It became rather obviously for everyone who knew that he was developing feelings for the fierce Redeed. Tried to hide it but didn't really succeed at it. While he, at the moment, achieved to hide it from Kushina, at least Raisin as well as B and his former teammates Derry and C clearly knew it but kept it for themselves, for now. Raisin's grin became rather mischievous when some examples of the rather obvious indications for A's growing feelings popped up in his mind and he made a mental note to himself to tease A about it at the earliest opportunity. But Raisin couldn't deny how similar he and A were personality-wise because he remembered how lost he was when he fell in love with his late wife. We're both some of the strongest shinobis alive in the whole freaking elemental nations. We're warriors who would face an entire army on our own without hesitation, but Kami help us if it comes to women and how to confess our feeling to them. Because when we're facing this challenge, we become helpless like a civilian who's facing an angry Biju. Well, considering Kushina's fierce temper means that A will have it hard in the future. Poor A. I'm almost tempted to pity him a bit. On the other hand, this promises to be funny to watch. A clearly amused Raisin thought. Then he started to laugh because he was visualizing the image of his eldest son who's struggling and suffering in the attempt to court Kushina. After he stopped laughing, he finished his breakfast and then used a Rai Shunshin, lightning body flicker, to reach his office and start another day of work. Raikage office, a bit later. Currently Raisin was looking through some files about a political faction in Kumo, which caused him a serious headache. The most notable members of this faction were three members of the civilian council, Orisho Nobara, Otter Asano and Shushi Akai. All three were merchants, but not as wealthy and important as they believed they were. Two members of the shinobi council, Koha Sato and Iba Doji, each was the head of a minor clan, as well as a few active shinobis. Lately this faction strongly tried to put pressure on Raisin because of how he dealt with the fact, or in their view, he didn't deal with it, that Kumo was known to be the one of the 5 great shinobi villages with the fewest clans and even fewer Kekkei Genkai, bloodline limit. While Raisin wasn't against getting new clans and Kekkei Genkai for Kumo, he was against their idea how Kumo should achieve that goal. They actually had the nerve to demand from him, their Raikage, to send out Kumo shinobis and giving them the mission to kidnap members, children if possible to make it easier to brainwash them into loyalty to Kumo, of several clans from other villages. Fools, don't they realize that if we kidnap clan members from other villages, especially if they have a Kekkei Genkai, we at the best ruin our village's reputation, which would cause us to lose clients and missions, and in the worst case it would start another war. He thought and scowled at their sheer idiocy. The very thought of kidnapping children to make them into nothing more than slaves and human breeding machines caused Raisin to growl and being disgusted with the people who suggested something like this. He was greatly ashamed about the fact that such people were in Kumo's own council and he was secretly searching for a way to let them disappear without causing a ruckus. Sadly this turned out to be rather difficult. They especially caused a headache for him because they seemed to be obsessed about gaining the Byakugan, wide eye, the special Njutsu, eye technique of the Hyuga clan from Konoha, the one village he didn't want to have anything to do with it, partially because he was fearing the possibility of Konoha learning the truth about Naruto and Kushina, who he both already sees as parts of his family. While he was cursing about stupid, power-hungry fools and tried to find the easiest way to deal with them, suddenly the office doors were slammed open and a young woman with 2 files in her hands stormed into the room without knocking or asking for permission to enter. The hidden storm Anbu in the office who acted as the Raikage's bodyguards, not that Raisin really needed them as he was a living shinobi legend for a reason, were about to attack the intruder, but then they recognized the woman. It was Mabui, a Kunoichi from Kumo and the Raikage's secretary. Mabui was a dark-skinned young woman with green eyes. She was about B's age. She wore very formal attire consisting of a long-sleeved, high-collared dress shirt and skirt, along with a pair of long earrings and sandals. She wore her light gray hair pulled back into a bun with 2 bangs that fall on either side of her face. At recognizing who it was that rudely disturbed him, Raisin scowled and growled, "What is? Raikage-sama, we have an urgent situation and big trouble." Mabui was all but shouting with a worried expression. This alerted Raisin instantly and told him that whatever Mabui talking about must really be serious because normally Mabui remained calm even in stressful situations. Report already. Raisin ordered and made a hand sign for her to continue. Raikage-sama received this combined reports from the Flash Anbu division, together with some infos from Bolt. I believe it's better you read them yourself. Mabui replied and hand over the 2 files she carried to Raisin. Enter Naruto asked to Rakiri, Thunderbreak. Raisin immediately started to read them, but the more he was reading, the more his expression turned into one of absolute rage, and he started leaking a rather strong killing intent. In his anger he even unconsciously partially activated his Raiten no Yoroi, lightning release armor, which caused small bolts of lightning starting to sparkle all over him. This was only increasing his already intimidating appearance. When he finished reading, he looked like he was about to explode. He then slammed his right fist onto his desk with such force, he smashed the wood into splinters. While doing this, he started shouting. Rawr. This goddamn, arrogant, brain-dead, assholes. What were they thinking, doing such an idiotic thing? I'm gonna kill them all. I will fry them to a point where they will look like charcoal. I will show them why I'm still the Raikage and why most people wouldn't dare risking to be the target of my wrath. When I'm finished with them, they will wish they would have never been born. At the sight of their cage losing his calm and looking like he would start a rampage every second, Mabui and the Storm Anbu unconsciously took a step back in fear. After continuing his rant for a few minutes, Raisin suddenly turned around to face his Storm Anbu and shouted. Anbu, immediately start searching for Dodai, A, Killer B, Shinigami, Death God, Kushina's Anbu name, Kenpachi Zaraki, Retsu Anohana, Dari and C. Tell them I want them in this room in 30 minutes because of an emergency. And also arrest the people who are responsible for this. The geniuses behind this are the counselors Arisho Nabara, Otter Asano, Shishi Akai and Iba Doji. Get them to the T&I department. We need their recorded confession and every detail of their plan tomorrow at the very latest. Give Mayuri Kuritsuchi the permission to do what he seems fitting as long this idiots are still alive after he is finished. Mabui, send a copy of this files to Mayuri so that he's informed what this is all about. Hi, Raikage-sama. The Anbu and Mabui replied and then disappeared to carry out their orders and get some distance between them and their angry leader. Then Naruto asked to Rakiri, Thunderbreak. After everyone left, Raisin tried to calm himself down to a point where he's able to think clear again in order to find a solution to solve this mess the easiest way possible. After he sat down into his large office chair, he looked at the remains of what used to be his desk once. He then sighed deeply and started massage his temples as he developed a nasty headache already because of this whole mess. That's just what I need, more trouble. As if it wasn't difficult enough already, this idiots did have to try to kidnap the Hyuga heiress and injure the clan head's wife and brother in the process. And as if that's not bad enough already, they did have to get caught and now make this even worse. Do they not realize that even if they would have been successful, it most likely would end in a war? Do they really think that Byakugan is worth another war? For the first time in his life since he became the Raikage after his predecessor, the Nidaime Raikage, second Lightning Shadow, died in the joint attack of Iwa, Kiri and Kumo against Uzushi Agakure, together with more than 90% of the invasive forces. At the very beginning of the Second Great Shinobi War, Raisin felt old because of the fact they could have planned and executed the Hyuga incident without anyone noticing it until it was too late. He then shook his head while growling. Enough of this self-pitying crap. I've no time for this now. I have to find a way out of this mess without causing a new war. Raisin sighed again because he could already tell that this was easier said than done and then started to develop plans to get his village out of this mess before everything went down the drain while he waited for the arrival of the people whose presence he ordered. 30 minutes later, on the order of their Raikage, 8 people were entering the office while wondering why they all together have been ordered to appear in their leader's office at once. Immediately after entering the office, every one of them noticed the destroyed desk. It seems that whatever the reason for this meeting was, it was urgent. After the last of them entered and closed the door behind himself, they stood in a line before the Raikage. When he saw that all of the people he requested were present, Raisin looked at them while recalling why he asked specifically for them. From the left to the right they were. Dodai, A, Killer B, Shinigami, Kushina, Dari, C, Kenpachi Zaraki and Retsu Anohana. Dodai's and A's appearance hadn't changed over the last few years. B also looked almost the same as before with the only exception he grew himself a goatee. Kushina on the other hand was impossible to recognize because she was in her Anbu outfit. She wore a black shirt, a dark gray Anbu armor over it and black gloves with metal arm protectors over them that covered her hands and forearms, black shinobi pants, shinobi sandals of the same color and the standard Kumo shin guards, but instead of being white with red stripes, hers were black with dark gray stripes. Over her face she wore a crimson-red mask with thin, slitted eye holes, and the kanjis for Death God, Shinigami, in place of the mouth, and the Kumagakure symbol on the forehead. It looks like a completely red Kiryu-Oinen mask with the described changes, and she wore her fiery red hair bound into a waist-length braid. She also wore a long crimson-red, sleeveless coat with decorated black lightning-like motifs on the edges. It looked like a red version of Minato Namikaze's coat only with lightning-like motifs instead of flame-like motifs. On the back of her coat were also written the kanjis for Death God. The symbols were blocked by an adachi that was slung on her back with a black leather belt. This was Kushina's new sword Tensa Zangetsu, Heaven Chain Slaying Moon. The sword's length was around 140 centimeters and it was complete black. Scabbard, blade, crossguard, hilt and even the chain that was attached at the end of the hilt, everything was black. The crossguard had 4 prongs and bent out to a curved and jagged form in the shape of the manji M, while the blade became curved as it nears the tip, with 3 protrusions along the blunt end of the sword close to its tip. While looking at Kushina, Raisin thought. Good. When she wears this outfit, not even one of the persons who were her friends when she was living in Konoha would recognize her. He then continued and looked at his former student Derry and Derry's partner C. Derry was a fairly tall, dark-skinned man with a slightly bulbous nose, black eyes that usually looked bored, and shaggy, white hair which covered his left eye. He wore a high-collared, sleeveless uniform with loose-fitting pants, bandages on his wrists, and the one strap over one shoulder flak jacket of a Kumogakure shinobi. Derry also had stylized characters for water, for Mizu, and lightning divided by Kaminari, tattooed on his right and left shoulders respectively, denoting his chakra's nature affinities, Suiton, water release, and Raiten, lightning release, as well as the fact that he had a Kekkei Genkai, the Ranten, storm release. The tattoo on his left arm also signified that he had inherited the third Raikage's black lightning. He carried a broad foldable cleaver-like sword, strapped to his back. C was a young man with short blonde hair and dark eyes. He wore a sleeveless black shirt with a one strap over one shoulder white flak jacket, black forehead protector, characteristic black, elbow-length arm guards, and the red and white Kumogakure shin guards, along with a pair of sandals. Raisin's gaze was now on the last 2 members of the group Kenpachi Zaraki and Retsu Anohana. Kenpachi Zaraki was a very tall, almost 2.10 meters, muscular man with a wild and aggressive appearance, which fits his personality. He had a long face with pronounced cheekbones and pronounced hairless eyebrow ridges. He had green eyes and long, stringy black hair that went past his shoulders. A noticeable trait in his appearance was a long thin scar run down the left side of his face. He wore an eye patch over his right eye. He wore a black robe, ragged black pants and straw sandals. He wore a white sleeveless haori which had a ragged look on it with the kanjis for Kenpachi, CK, written on it. Around his hip, he wore a sash which had a metal plate embedded in the center of its front, like the buckle of a belt, with the Kumo symbol on it. On his left side, carried in his sash, he wore an adachi that had a guard which extends inward from its center, similar to a shinai. The hilt was white, though most of it was wrapped in bandages, as was his sword sheath. All in all he looked more like a thug than a shinobi, but it would be a fatal mistake to believe this, because he was one of Kumo's strongest and deadliest shinobis in the art of kenjutsu. Retsu Anohana had the appearance of a slender and very youthful woman with a kind and gentle expression, blue eyes and long black hair, worn as a large braid down the front of her body. She wore her Kumo Hitai as a necklace. She wore a white shitage, shirt-like underclothing, and a black kozode, Japanese robe, over it, black hakama, a white obi, sash, around her waist and white tabi, traditional Japanese socks, and waraji, straw sandals, at her feet. She also wore a white haori with black lightning-like motifs on the edges, and the kanjis for bloody death ad oen, Chimamire no Shai, on the back. The way she carried her sword was rather unique. She had a large string attached to the sheath of her sword and carried it over her shoulder. Her sword was a tachi with a strongly curved blade, while the tsuba had an oval shape and the handle was red. After looking at any of them, Raisin cleared his throat and said. Thank you all for appearing this fast. Does any of you already have heard why I called you? All of them denied, so Raisin continued. Good, then I will give you a brief summary. As some of you may know, there is a political faction in Kumogakure whose members are displeased about the well-known fact that Kumo has the fewest amount of shinobi clans and even fewer clans whose members possess a Kekkei Genkai among the 5 great hidden villages, despite the fact that during the past 17 years, since the end of the Second Great Shinobi War, 4 shinobi clans joined Kumo, namely the Kamunkuru clan, 4, the Yukitora clan, 5, the Kariudo clan, 6, and the Shiroil Kami clan, 7. This faction recently gained more influence and power and started to become an annoyance and a risk for Kumo's safety. May I ask a question? Kushina suddenly interrupted. How exactly did a bunch of counselors, who can do little more than kick up a racket, suddenly become a risk for Kumo's safety? I thought, in Kumo the council have, unlike in Konoha, not more power than their position as mere advisors for the Raikage allow them to have. And what's with this 4 clans? I believe I've heard from the Shiroil Kami clan during the time before I came to Kumo, but I've never heard from the other 3 before. Sorry, I have probably forgotten to tell you about them. Raisin admitted a bit embarrassed that he forgot to inform her about something that important. You see, next to Naruto's and your existence, the fact that 4 new clans joined Kumo is one of our most guarded secrets because ever since the founding of the hidden villages, there was no village that managed to get a new clan additional to its founding clans. The info that Kumo got 4 new clans, 2 of them with a Kekkei Genkai, would cause the other villages to panic. And that could have some rather unpleasant results. Yes, I know that much too, thank you. I'm neither a genin who's still wet behind the ears, nor stupid or retarded. I've asked where they did suddenly come from, why I haven't heard from 3 of this clans, and what are this Kekkei Genkai you talked about. Kushina replied in an annoyed tone of voice, because Raisin barely told her more than common knowledge that she already knew, and she didn't like it if someone talked with her, as if she was a genin rookie, and not the seasoned shinobi she actually was. Her reaction amused most of the other peoples in the room, because once again her temper, which all Uzumakas, especially the woman, were famed and feared for, caused her, much to her own embarrassment after she realized it, to talk faster than to think. When she realized what she said just now and seeing the amusement on everyone's faces, she blushed, what her mask thankfully hid, and mumbled an embarrassed, sorry. I meant no offense. Please continue. Raisin shook his head and grinned, obviously amused at seeing how Kushina's temper, once again, did get the better out of her. He lets her disrespectfulness towards him slide because one of the first things he learned when Kushina and Naruto started to live with him and his sons was that many if not all rumors and stories about the Uzumaki clan mostly were true, especially those about their rather unique personalities, their explosive tempers and above all their terrible wrath. He also somewhat enjoyed her straight and honest manner because she wasn't afraid to contradict him just because he was the Raikage. I was about to answer your questions before you interrupted, a still smirking Raisin replied to Kushina, and I know very well you're not a genin nor stupid. If you do not mind, I will continue now with my explanation in order to get to a point. Kushina nodded sheepishly, and Raisin continued, well, the reason why you never heard from them out of legends is because they lived hidden and isolated in order to have their peace from the hidden villages. Because of that everyone thought they were extinct or being nothing more than a myth. About the clans, where they were from and why they came to Kumo. The Kumuinkuru clan used to live in the mountains and rainforests of Mori no Kuni, land of forests. They possess the Kekkei Genkai Butsu no Henkin, animal transformation, which allow anyone who possesses it to transform into a specific animal that matches the user's character and soul. They're able to use 3 forms. A partial transformation which changes only specific parts of the body, a complete transformation which allows them to change completely into an animal, and a transformation which looks more like an animal with a few human characteristics. I guess that this clan is the source for many of the tales about creatures like werewolves, centaurs, mermaids, etc. They're easily recognizable by their clan's traditional tattoos, which show which animal they can transform into and their hairstyle. The most common hair color is ash gray, and they often have long hair with beads weaved into it, and the color of the beads display their position. The Karyudo clan used to live in the mountains of Tori no Kuni, land of birds. They have no Kekkei Genkai, but they have giant eagles as companions which are big enough to carry up to 3 peoples over long distances. The Karyudo clan also have proverbial eagle eyes, and because of that they are skilled marksmen. They prefer to fight with bow and arrows over long distances, but are skilled with knives for close combat too. Because of their famous sight and their companions they're acting as scouts and border security, while they're staying unseen up in the sky. They're recognizable by their eyes which are pupilless, and the women's are silver, while the men's are golden, and they also have feathers weaved into their hair to display their connection with their companions. The Yukitora clan used to live in the isolation of the mountains of Yuki no Kuni, land of snow. Like the Karyudo clan they bond themselves with animals, but the Yukitora clan have giant white tigers as companions, which can have a shoulder height up to 2.20 meters. The Yukitora clan members have increased senses and reflexes like the Inuzuka clan from Konoha. They prefer close combat together with their tiger companions and use weapons like clawed gauntlets, swords and spears. They keep the way they forge their weapons a strict secret and rarely made a weapon for someone outside their clan. They're recognizable by their rather exotic-looking weapons, the tattoos around the eyes and on the cheeks, which are always modeled after the facial marks of the companion of a clan member, and lastly by their eyes, because the sclera isn't white as usual but has always the same color as the iris, and the only known eye colors are different shades of blue and green, and they have slitted pupils. And lastly the Shiroil Kami clan from Kiba no Kuni, land of fangs. They possess the Kekkei Genkai Rimshigen, Hunter Eye, and Jutsu, which when it is activated increases the eyesight immensely, allow them to see in the dark by using infravision to see the infrared spectrum, what even allows them to track someone down based on the trail, the body temperature leaves on surfaces for some time, and allows them to see through genjutsus and distinguish clones created by elemental and non-elemental bunshinjutsus, clone techniques. They're skilled sword fighters and always carry two longswords on their backs. One of the sword is made from normal iron and is used to fight thugs, bandits and animals, basically opponents that aren't a real challenge, while the other sword is made from a secret chakra metal alloy, which is only known by the Shiroil Kami clan, and this sword is used to fight other shinobis and is the base for many of their clan techniques. Creating their own swords is something like a maturity ritual in this clan. Only if they are able to create a simple iron sword and a more difficult chakra metal sword and reinforce them with several seals, then they are allowed to wear a special necklace and are seen and treated as an adult. This clan is also skilled in brewing many different potions for healing or cure something or to enhance the body. They're recognizable by their eyes, which have amber eyes which are glowing if they have their ninjutsu activated, and slitted pupils in their chalk white hair, as well as the silver necklace that all members who are viewed as adults are wearing. That looks like the head of a wolf with red eyes that is baring his teeth. And the reason why they left their homelands and eventually joined Kumo were the following. During the Second Great Shinobi War, Sora no Kuni, Land of the Sky, invaded Mori no Kuni, Land of Forests, and Tori no Kuni, Land of Birds, and forced both the Kamui-Kuru clan and the Kariudo clan to flee from their respective homes. After both clans met each other, they formed an alliance and came to Kumo because they were confident that Kumo wouldn't want to miss the chance to get two new clans, and they were right. About 5 years after the end of the Second Great Shinobi War, the Yukitora clan left Yuki no Kuni, Land of Snow, because their clan had become too numerous, so the land couldn't feed them anymore. And because family, unity and loyalty stands above everything else for the Yukitora clan, they would rather search for a new home than split up the clan. The clan heads also knew that the clan now had to join a hidden village to ensure the safety and survival of their clan and to guarantee its supply with everything they need, because as soon their existence would become known by the hidden villages, they would be after them in the hope to gain a new clan or to annihilate a possible threat. So they left and came to Kumo because its natural surroundings with the mountains, forests and cold climate are the most similar to their former home compared to the other lands with hidden villages, and therefore the most suitable place for their tigers. Lastly, the Shiroim Kami clan. During the Third Great Shinobi War, their homeland Kiba no Kuni, Land of Fangs, became the battlefield for many skirmishes between Iwagakure and Sunagakure. The Shiroil Kami clan has repeatedly been accidentally drawn into these battles and suffered from the destruction of their home and the deaths of many clan members. After an exceptionally bad battle, they decided to leave Kiba no Kuni, Land of Fangs, and because I and the former clan head have met each other in the past and became friends, they came to Kumo and asked for sanctuary. That's the whole story behind it. During Raisin's explanation, Kushina was really impressed about the things she learned about those four clans. Suddenly a question popped up in her head and promptly blurted out with it. Wait a sec. If I've understood correctly, you were saying that, even though four powerful shinobi clans have joined Kumo, there are still some idiots who are thinking that Kumo still has to obtain more clans. And let me guess, they want you to send shinobis to kidnap members from clans of other hidden villages. Raisin was quite impressed that Kushina, after gaining this much new infos in the past few minutes, connected the dots this quickly. After they heard Kushina's question, everyone looked at Raisin and waited for his answer. That's correct. You got even the kidnap part. They want to kidnap children if possible to make it easier to brainwash them. Raisin replied, and suddenly everyone's expression turned into one of disgust, anger or both. Raisin then continued with barely suppressed anger, and this is where we get to the part about how, to quote Kushina's fitting comment, a bunch of counselors who can do little more than kick up a racket suddenly become a risk for Kumo's safety. Barely an hour ago, I've received a report from Flash about how the former mentioned faction planned to get a new Kekkei Genkai. To say the truth, they already tried it and failed. And this is what happened. Under the disguise of negotiating an alliance between our villages, a group of them including Koha Sato entered Konoha and tried to kidnap Hinata Hyuga, daughter of Hiashi Hyuga and Hitomi Hyuga and All of a sudden Raisin was interrupted by a blast of killing intent and a furious yell. What? Everyone looked at the source and saw something most would describe as a demon standing amongst them. Kushina was beside herself with anger. Even though she has left Konoha and was considering herself a Kumonin now, Hitomi Hyuga was still one of her best friends. She snarled in a voice that demanded for answers, and she wanted them now. What did they do to Hitomi-chan and little Hinata-chan? Answer me, Raisin, now. Raisin knew it would be smart to answer her before she completely lost it, and so he continued. As I said, they tried to kidnap the heiress of the Hyuga clan. At night, Koha Sato sneaked into the Hyuga compound and into the bedroom of the girl. However, before he could disappear again, he was suddenly surprised by the girl's mother, Hitomi Hyuga, and after a short fight, he managed to injure her, as well as Hisashi Hyuga, who rushed to her aid. He managed to get out of the compound with the girl, but there he was caught by Hiashi Hyuga, who killed Koha in no time. But now comes the bad part, as Koha was supposedly under the protection for being an ambassador, his cronies demand the head of Hyuga as compensation for Koga's death. I've already ordered to arrest the remaining known people behind this, who stayed here in Kumo, to find out every last of their plans, and also who else is a part of them. These arrested also are the known masterminds of this idiocy. They are the now former councillors Arisho Nobara, Oda Asano, Shushi Akai and Iba Doji, and they were directly sent to Mayuri Kuritsuchi and the T&I department to obtain their avowal. And now why I've called for you. I intend to go to Konoha as soon we have the proof for them that this whole mess wasn't planned by Kumo, but instead was an act of some idiots in order to prevent the outbreak of a new war. And I want all of you to accompany me. After he finished, Raisin looked at the 8 people in the room who all looked furious. Suddenly a deep and rough voice could be heard, Raisin, not that I want to complain. But if you want to prevent another war, then why the hell do you want me accompanying you too? You know very well that I'm not the one for peace negotiation chit-chat, but for cutting down opponents cheaper by the dozen. This voice belonged to Kenpachi Zaraki, one of the strongest sword fighters of Kumo, and something like the Kumo version of Kisame Hoshigaki in terms of pure strength and chakra reserves. I know that fact very well, Kenpachi, but I need you and Retsu Anohana due to special circumstances. Raisin replied to Kenpachi, well, I'm going there with the intention to stop the shit from hitting the fan. I know very well that there's a big chance that Konoha attacks me on sight or that some idiots try to take revenge on their own. That's why I want you, all of you, with me, in case everything goes wrong and we have to fight. Because you are some of the strongest shinobis of Kumo, and every one of you is able to take on several enemies alone, and as a group, we should be able to fight a way out of Konoha and escape. As soon Kenpachi heard this, a bloodthirsty smirk appeared on his face. And you Retsu Anohana have to come with me, because you are Kumo's best Irem medic ninja, and from what I gathered Hitomi Hyuga and Hisashi Hyuga were poisoned by Koha Sato's attacks, and Konoha has no one who can help them. Raisin explained, I don't want that they have to die such an unnecessary death by the hand of this idiot, only because I didn't realize this shit earlier. If you're able to cure them from this poison, it may be also cool down the anger and make this easier to finish all this without an escalation. I will give you the part of the report which is a list of everything that maybe could be useful for you to identify the poison Koha has used, or at least narrow it down. I understand, Raikage-sama. I will try my best. Retsu Anohana replied. After she received the mentioned report and finished to read every single detail, she spoke again, Raikage-sama, I would like to ask you for the permission that Kushina-san comes with me. Why me? I'm not an Irem medic ninja, asked Kushina as surprised as everyone else. Why not you? It may be true that medical ninjutsu isn't your forte, but it's still above average because you were once a student of Tsunade Senju, who is rumored to be the best Irem medic ninja alive, and I'm sure she did train you at least the basics. Besides that, right now Konoha will be very tense towards us, because of that I would prefer to have someone with me that watches my back, just in case some shinobis let their hate decide their actions. And because of the current distrust it's more likely that they will allow us to help the injured, if only we 2 women will go there. And lastly it's because you know Konoha, its citizens and shinobis and even the Hyuga clan, so there is the chance that you may notice things the rest of us doesn't realize, and you may be able to detect if Konoha is plotting something. Retsu Anohana explained her idea. After he thought about it for a moment, Raisin nodded and ordered Kushina to do as Retsu Anohana had suggested it, and Kushina nodded to show that she has understood. So when are we going? We have to save Hitomi-chan, and I want to kick the ass of these idiots who planned all this. Kushina urged, because she wanted to help Hitomi as soon as possible, because Hitomi and her family were some of the few people who actually saw Naruto as the hero he was and tried to help Kushina and him. We will leave for Konoha as soon as Mayuri gets every info which may be useful for Kumo out of them, and we have enough to prove that this was planned solely by them and that this isn't just an excuse from us. We will also take this 4 with us to Konoha, where they together with this so-called ambassador will be executed by us for treason in attendance of Konoha's council, to show them that Kumagakure and I as the Raikage doesn't tolerate treason. Normally I would allow Konoha to do this, as well as interrogate them to prove everything beforehand, as a satisfaction, but unfortunately this asses know some things about Kumo which Konoha isn't allowed to find out. Raisin replied. Just when he had finished talking someone knocked on the door. After he shouted, is open. From Raisin, the door was opened and a man who already looked very eccentric was entering the office. His appearance had a skeletal-like look to it with a skull-like face paint. His face was painted entirely white with the inner portion of his face painted black, with the exception of his nose. His eyes were golden color and he constantly bared his teeth, what was giving the appearance of him constantly grinning. His whole body, at least every visible part like his face and hands, had been painted black and white. Both his ears were seemingly replaced with stubbed golden cones. His fingernails were blue and, with the exception of the fingernail on his right middle finger, were all short. The one long fingernail was as long as the finger itself. He also wore a white hat with two ends that pointed to his right and a large purple scarf around his neck. His blue hair was styled into a short Mohican and almost covered by his hat. He wore a black shirt, black hakamas and a white sash tied around his waist with his sword, which was in a leather sheath that hung directly in front of him, attached to it. The sword's guard was wrapped in cloth and had several spiky protrusions sticking out right below the blade, which appeared to resemble leaves. The hilt was pink. He also wore a white lab coat. This man was Mayuri Kuritsuchi, head of Kumo's T&I department and vice head of the department for research and development as well. Ah, Mayuri Kuritsuchi. Basing on your presence I conclude you're finished with these traitors and got everything I asked for. Raisin asked the strange man. Yes, Raikage-sama. I was able to persuade them to tell me everything you want to know from them really fast. In fact, they were singing like canaries before I could even properly get started. Here is your report with any infos, and in the small scroll are the video recordings of their confessions sealed, while the persons are sealed in the bigger scroll. Still living, like you asked. Mayuri said with a voice that sounded slightly insane. At his mention of him persuading the traitors, all others shivered slightly and were almost pitying the poor fools, because Mayuri Kuritsuchi's torture ideas and methods were famed and feared to the same extent as how cruel and painful they were. And he was a master at breaking people's resistance by using mental or physical pain. If that's everything, I will take my leave. I still have so many things to do, Mayuri said, and after a nod from Raisin, he left. Raisin was reading the infos they gathered from the traitors, and suddenly a small grin formed itself on his face. Well, this is rather surprising. And good news for us too. He then looked at the group in his office and ordered everyone, get now any supplies you may need and be back here in 1 hour at the latest. We'll leave to Konoha immediately after you're all here again. We will travel at maximum speed, then we maybe manage to get there before more damage is done. Do you understand? Raisin asked. Understand, Raikage-sama. They were shouting all together. Well then, dismissed. Raisin snarled and all left to start preparations for this mission. Konoha, Hokage Tower, Council Chamber, 4 days later. The Sandaime Hokage Hiruzen felt very old right now. He had led Konoha through the second and the third of the Great Shinobi Wars after his predecessor and sensei, teacher, the Nidaime Hokage Tobirama Senju, appointed him as the Sandaime during a mission in the First Great Shinobi War and then sacrificed himself to enable his comrades to withdraw. But right now he felt as if ever since the night of the Kyuubi attack all luck had left Konoha because there weren't many good events in the past years. Especially after the death of Naruto, Kushina, Rin and Kakashi. Yes, due to his many years as a shinobi, the Sandaime Hokage had lost almost every hope to see Naruto, Kushina, Rin and Kakashi ever again. They were missed since more than 2 years without even the slightest hint or life sign. The chance of them being still alive were almost zero from the beginning. He knew he had told Jiraiya they may be still alive, but the truth was, there were no reports about people who were seen leaving before the explosion. He lied to his student out of good intentions, but he still lied. He only gave this report to Jiraiya, so that Jiraiya still had something to live and hope for, because Sarutobi was sure about one thing. If Jiraiya ever should lose that small amount of hope he still had left, it would either cause him to rampage throughout Konoha or do the same thing like Tsunade. Disappear and most likely drinking himself to death. Sarutobi was sure that Jiraiya had recognized the lie immediately and knew the reasons too, but decided to ignore it. Jiraiya wasn't Konoha's spy master without a reason. He, like Sarutobi, knew exactly that the attackers that night only could have been shinobis from Konoha because only people from Konoha would have a reason to attack Naruto. First the deaths of Naruto, Kushina, Rin and Kakashi, then Tsunade and her apprentice Shizune left and most likely will never return, and Jiraiya's love for Konoha was the only thing that held him back from summoning the toads to give some people what they deserve or from leaving Konoha too. A bit later Makoto Uchiha nearly started a massacre after she learned the truth about how her husband Fugaku Uchiha and many other peoples made the life of her best friend Kushina Uzumaki and her son Naruto a hell on earth. Since then Makoto never spoke more than a few words with her husband. And now this mess with Kumo. Itomi and his Ashi are poisoned by something none of our medics are able to cure and Kumo demanded to hand over Hiashi because he killed their ambassador. Did the heavens curse Konoha for disrespecting your last wish and for what they did to Kushina and Naruto? Or is it you, Minato, that cursed Konoha for how they treated your wife, your son and your students, from wherever you are now? The Sandaime Hokage sighed and started to focus again and listened to the endless shouts, demands and insults that were screamed across the room. Then his gaze met the new ambassador from Kumo who grinned triumphantly about how he possibly gets what he and Kumo demanded very soon. The Sandaime Hokage did have to restrain himself to not simply kill this bastard and be done with it. During the past 4 days, the council chamber became all but a battlefield because Hiashi Hyuga was willing to agree to Kumo's demands in order to save his wife Hitomi and his younger brother Hisashi from death. That splitted the council in 2 factions, the first that didn't try to prevent Hiashi from saving his wife and brother, namely Tsume and Yazuka, the quick-tempered Yazuka clan matriarch, the members of the famed Inoshikacho trio Inoichi Yamanaka, clan head of the Yamanaka clan, Shikaku Nara, clan head of the Nara clan, and Shimza Akimichi, clan head of the Akimichi clan. The other faction consisted of nearly everyone else in the room besides a few that stayed neutral, like Shibi Aburam, clan head of the Aburam clan, and the Sandaime Hokage, who personally was on Hiashi's side, but as the Hokage he was forced to think about Konoha first. Sarutobi started to lose his patience again, so he decided to end this. Suddenly everyone's voice fell silent because they were hit with killing intent that caused even the seasoned shinobi to shiver, and then the Sandaime punched the table with enough force to nearly break it apart and shouted, downright furious. "Shut up. All of you. You, Kumo ambassador, if you don't wipe that smirk of your face in the next 3 seconds, I will kill you and don't care about possible consequences, understand?" This outburst surprised everyone and suddenly reminded them all that the Sandaime Hokage still was one of the strongest shinobis alive and wasn't called the Shinobi no Kami, god of shinobi, for fun. He may look like a gentle grandfather figure and loved peace, but he was a man who fought and survived all 3 great shinobi wars. The fact that he reached his old age as a shinobi was a proof for his strength too. Geez, it seems that if someone annoys him enough, this old geezer is almost as bad as the Sandaime Raikage, that incompetent mindless muscle man. The ambassador thought with a sneer, but still stopped grinning immediately because he didn't want to strain his luck. If this Konoha fools would realize that the Raikage didn't order this and that my threats are nothing but bluffs, then my life would be over for sure. But there is no way they will ever find out. Well done, Hokage-sama. To shut everyone up this easily, maybe I should try that too. During a meeting with this annoying clan elders thought and impressed Hiashi. It seems that you still had some of your former fighting spirit left, Sarutobi. Danzo remarked in his mind. You should all be ashamed to act like little children and nearly begin to beat each other only because you can't agree with each other. You are a disgrace to Konoha. The Sandaime continued shouting and some counselors at least got the decency to be ashamed. Suddenly an Anbu appeared in a shunshin, body flicker, and instantly became the target of the old Hokage's anger for his interruption. What is now? Hokage-sama, intruders have entered the tower and they are skilled enough to enter Konoha and reach the Hokage tower without triggering an alarm. The Anbu reported. The Sandaime Hokage was about to reply something when suddenly the whole tower was shaken by a loud bang. Konoha, main gates, 10 minutes earlier. It was a nice evening with a gentle breeze coming from the west and not a single cloud in the sky after a beautiful sunset. At the main gate entrance were 2 Konoha chunin. Both were relaxing and enjoying the remaining warmth by leaning back on the 2 rear legs of their chairs and resting their legs on the desk of the entrance toll while they were watching the sight of the clear night sky. "Ah. This is the life, isn't it?" said one of the chunin. "Yeah, nothing to do but relax, enjoy the nice weather and let life pass you by slowly," said the other. "You're so right. But shouldn't we stay on guard a bit more? You know, because of this Hyuga incident, whatever that happened nearly a week before," asked the first chunin. "Why? Do you believe Kumo tries something like this again?" countered the second chunin. "Well, I've heard it's not over yet. I've even heard someone talking about Kumo threats to start a war with us if they don't receive what they demands," replied the first. "War? Nonsense, Konoha is the strongest and biggest of the hidden villages. Kumo wouldn't dare to declare war on Konoha on their own because they wouldn't stand a chance," grinned the second chunin. "How can you be so sure about that?" asked the first chunin. "Because Konoha won all 3 great shinobi wars in the past. If we were able to win the wars in the past, we will be able to win wars in the future. Our guard duty today, as well as our future guard duties, will be as peaceful as our past ones. If the Hyuga incident proves something, then that Kumo fears Konoha. Why else would they try something like that?" the second chunin said. "True, but I would give a lot for something interesting to happen at least once during our shift," replied the first chunin. "You know the old saying, be careful what you wish for because you might." Started the second chunin but stopped when he felt something strange. They suddenly began to feel uncomfortable, but they couldn't say why. But then they were looking down the road and saw something that made them pale and nearly freeze with fear. A group of 9 people was running towards them and all of them seemed to be Kumo nin. Now both guards realized they felt the killing intent of this group. Especially the shinobi that was running at the front made both chunins tremble with fear because he not only leaked the strongest killing intent but also was the biggest and most intimidating of the whole group and they swore they could see a black aura around him that spoke of slow, agonizing pain and death. But the things that freaked the two Chunin out the most were the small lightnings, which were occasionally sparkling over this man's body, and the fact that this wrathful giant was now towering over the two of them. Saint, stop. What do you want here in Keiko Konoha? Demanded, stuttered one of the Chunins and tried to act as tough as someone can while he was stuttering and trembling in fear. The giant man raised an eyebrow after he heard this pathetic attempt to sound intimidating, but then he replied, I'm Raisin Yutsuki, Sandame Raikage of Kumogakure, and I'm here because I have to talk with your Hokage. Immediately. After they heard that, both Chunins became pale as ghosts, but suddenly one of them realized something he believed to be an evidence that Raisin was lying. If you really are the Raikage, then why aren't you wearing the traditional hat and robes of the Kages? And even if you are the Raikage, after Kumo's treacherous actions against Konoha, people from your village aren't welcomed here anymore. Now piss off before I. The only thing the Chunin achieved with his brave but stupid rant was that Raisin finally completely lost his patience, and before the first Chunin could finish his sentence, with a movement as if he was trying to drive away an insect, Raisin backhanded the Chunin in the face and sent him flying until he was hitting a wall, knocking him out cold in the process. Before the second Chunin even realized what happened, he joined his friend in Dreamland. Now since this problem is out of the way, let's go to the Hokage Tower. I would like to stay unnoticed until we enter the tower, understand? Raisin growled. Hi, Raikage-sama. His escort replied. Then let's go. Hokage Tower, Council Chamber. After the bang that shook the whole tower, the council was about to descend into complete chaos. The shinobis in the room were preparing themselves for battle, while the civilians started to panic. Suddenly there could be heard someone's laugh, and everyone was looking at the man who was laughing as if all of this was a giant joke. It was the ambassador who was still sitting on his chair while he was holding his stomach and writhing with laughter. Enter Naruto Shippuden Anger, Ikari. Sarutobi was about to jump at the man and start to wring his neck, but before he could do so, loud noises coming from the other side of the double doors to the chamber could be heard. I don't care if he was in a meeting with Kami or the Raikudl Sennin, Sage of the Six Paths, himself. I'm going in there and you can't stop me. Shouted an angry male voice that was familiar to at least two persons in the room. Sarutobi immediately recognized who this voice belonged to. To everyone's surprise, as soon as the ambassador heard the voice, he choked on his laugh while he started sweating bullets and became sickly pale. If Sarutobi would have to describe it, the ambassador looked as if he had seen a ghost. After the shouting, everyone in the council chamber could hear various noises coming from behind the doors. There were the sounds of scuffling, things breaking, bones breaking, some people screaming in pain or abject horror. Halt. You're not allowed to enter this room. Leave right now or we will use lethal force. This voice belonged to one of the two Anbu guards who were guarding the entrance. Yo, get out of my space, or I'll plant my foot on your face. Replied the voice of a young man. Barely 5 seconds later, the double doors were knocked open as one of the Anbu guards from outside flew into the room. On his mask was a clearly visible soul imprint. At the same time as the Anbu flew into the room, a loud shout could be heard. Wee. All eyes turned to the now open door and the persons which were now visible in the doorway. On the right side stood a very tall young man, around 2.20 meters, that seemed to be the one who shouted after he sent the Anbu flying. He had his right arm stretched into the air in a strange pose, with the index finger and pinky of his right fist outstretched. He had dark skin, combed back blonde hair and a goatee, and wore a rather standard Kumo shinobi outfit besides oval-shaped sunglasses, a long white scarf around his neck, a long red rope tied around his waist, and he carried 7 swords on his back. He also had the kanji for iron D, Tetsu, tattooed on his right shoulder, and on his left cheek, he had a tattoo that looked like a 2 horns. On the left side stood a man that was even bigger, around 2.40 meters, and seemed to be a few years older than the first one. He had his arms crossed, what was emphasizing his burly appearance and the muscles of his arms even more. He had dark skin, combed back blonde hair and a beard, and wore a purple high-collared outfit with ragged sleeves and matching, also ragged pants, golden bangle bracelets on each wrist, a golden belt around his waist, with a boar's face engraved in the center, and the standard white Kumo flak jacket, Hittite and shin guards. He had black Ma shuriken tattoos on both shoulders. In the middle between these two men stood a masked woman who looked rather small and petite, around 1.65 meters, next to them. She had her red hair bound into a waist-length braid, and she wore what looked like a customized Anbu outfit, which is color entirely consists of the colors dark gray, black and crimson red, but the crimson red Anbu mask with the kanjis for death god, Shinigami, written on it, and the Kumo symbol engraved on the forehead, and an entirely crimson red, sleeveless coat as well. She carried a black sword which was almost as long as her hide on her back. At the realization that these people were Kumo nin, every Konoha nin prepared himself for a fight, but because the 3 Kumo shinobis did nothing but stand there, almost all from the Konoha side refocused their attention from these 3 to whatever was behind them. Behind the three stood a giant, around 2.60 meters, dark-skinned man with a largely muscular and well-defined build, who was bigger than any other present person. He had long blonde hair which flowed into his back, along with a long beard and unusual eyes with green irides, dark sclery and no pupils, and he also had the kanji for lightning divided by Kaminari tattooed on his right shoulder. He wore a black Kumo hit IA that he wore like a bandana and a thick red rope tied around his waist. He also wore ragged dark blue sweatpants and the standard white Kumo flak jacket and shin guards. As soon they raised their heads and looked at this giant man, they were greeted with a sight that would have put the Shinigami to shame. A vengeful-looking Raisin Yutsuki with fires of unholy rage burning around his form and licking away at the ceiling. Behind the giant man stood 5 more Kumo nin, while the hall outside the council chamber looked as if a bomb had gone off, with cracks, dents, and holes on the floor, ceiling and walls. Lying on the ground and some even sticking out of the walls and the ceiling were the unlucky shinobi who tried to stop this group of Kumo shinobis. Especially one of the Anbu which was currently lying on the floor and groaning in pain was quite an eye-catcher because he looked like a human-sized pretzel, with his arms and legs clearly being broken and bent in a position that were simply not natural for any person to be in. Suddenly the big man's gaze found the ambassador, while the ambassador's expression showed that he would like to be anywhere but in this room. This confused Sarutobi because he couldn't understand why the man was this afraid. "There you are, you little bastard. When I get my hands on you, I'm going to rip you apart with my bare hands." While he was snarling this, the giant man charged into the chamber, not even bother to duck while passing the doorway, which was about 10 centimeters smaller than him, but instead smashing through the upper door frame, as if it wasn't even there, and grabbed the ambassador who was much smaller than he, Raisin, was by his collar, and lifted him from the ground with only one hand, and started shaking the small man like a rag doll. Some Konoha nin were about to attack the angry giant, not to save the ambassador, but because they intended to show this Kumo nin what happened if they messed with Konoha. But before they made 2 steps, they were stopped by the voice of the Sandaime Hokage. "Stop. Everyone. Do not attack. This is an order," Sarutobi shouted. But Hokage-sama, they violently broke into this room. "After all, who are this Kumo nin and why should we let them get away with this?" Fugaku Uchiha contradicted. "I say it once again. Do not attack. Or you will die." After the council heard this from their leader they backed down. Sarutobi then continued, "The big man who is about to strangle this ambassador is no one else than Raisin Yutsuki, the Sandaime Raikage." This revelation caused the Konoha side to gasp and stare at this giant man who still held the ambassador at the neck like a young puppy. "Old man, I think it would be useful if you would calming down yourself and explain this people's why we're here." The man that stood on the left side of the doorway and who looked very similar like Raisin, said. "You're right," Raisin replied and took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. Then Naruto Shippuden asked anger, "Hikari, well, would you please explain why you're here, who your escort is, and why you caused such a ruckus?" Sarutobi asked while his left eye started to twitch as a sign of his anger. "You're right, Sarutobi. I should have already introduced them to you. Come in." Raisin bellowed in the direction of the door. On his command the remaining 5 entered and were lining up behind Raisin, who sat down on a chair across from Sarutobi and passed the ambassador down to the men on his right side and said, "B. Hold this for a moment. Well, these 2 are my sons A and Killer B, the woman with the crimson mask between them is the Shinku Shinigami no Kumo, Crimson Death God of Kumo, or simply Shinigami, the one with the eye patch with the kanji for lightning divided by Kaminari, on it is Dodai, and the other one with an eye patch is Kenpachi Zaraki, the other woman is Retsu Anohana, the one with the lazy look is Dari, and the one at his side is C. Raisin introduced his escort to Sarutobi and the Konoha Council. After he heard these names, the Anbu commander tensed slightly. After a questioning look from the Sandaime Hokage, he explained, "I was tensing because I recognized some of the names here from the bingo book as well as their ranks. Could you please tell us what you remembered?" Danzo asked, but on the inside he was greatly disturbed because he too remembered a few of their names from the bingo book and he was sure that his former teammate Sarutobi knew them too. "Well, it seems as if the group around Raikage-sama has 1 SS rank shinobi and at least 4 S rank shinobi amongst them." The Anbu commander explained, "First there is Raikage-sama who is SS ranked, then there are his 2 sons A and Killer B, who are both S ranked, like the woman with the mask, who is called the Shinku Shinigami no Kumo. She's a Kunoichi who appeared quite recently in the bingo book and she also became S ranked by only using Kenjutsu. Lastly there is Dodai who is the tag team partner of Raikage-sama, what makes him S rank too." After the Anbu commander finished his explanation, many of the Konoha side became rather anxious. "Troublesome Hokage. You knew this, didn't you? That's why you ordered anyone not to attack?" asked Shikaku Nara the Sandaime Hokage. "Yes, I knew some of this shinobis. The truth is, even if I was back in my prime, it would be very difficult for me to fight the Sandaime Raikage to a draw, not to mention defeating him, because he is so powerful that he stands on the same level as my senseis, the Shodai Sama Hashirama Senju and the Nidaime Sama Tabarama Senju, as well as Madara Uchiha. You should also know that his son A is the only person who fought the Yondaime Hokage and was able to react to the Yondaime's famed Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, and barely dodge it, what makes him now after the Yondaime's death the fastest shinobi alive. The Sandaime Hokage answered. His answer was rather shocking for Konoha, because not only their powerful leader admitted that he would most likely lose in a fight with the Sandaime Raikage, the Sandaime Hokage also told them that the Raikage was as powerful as 3 of the strongest shinobis that ever lived. But especially the last part, about A being able to dodge the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, disturbed the Konohan in the most, because said jutsu had the reputation to be impossible to avoid. You have a rather impressive escort, Raikage Dono, but you still have to explain why you were causing such a ruckus and why you have come to Konoha. I assume it has something to do with this ambassador, but what exactly? The Sandaime Hokage went back to his original question before this news caused some of his shinobis to do something stupid. Why we caused such a ruckus is easy to explain. Your guards tried to prevent me from speaking with you and they even tried to attack us. That's why we knocked them out. Raisin explained. And to answer your question why I've came to Konoha. It has indeed something to do with this so-called ambassador. I came personally to Konoha to clarify that Kumo wasn't behind this so-called Hyuga incident and that the people who planned it, like this ambassador, did this without my knowledge and approval, Raisin continued, and as soon he said this, the civilians were starting to shout again. Lies. You really think we believe your lame excuses? Now you're trying to blame others. Silence. I wasn't finished yet, so just shut the hell up until I'm finished. Raisin roared and was shooting evil looks at the civilians. Raikage Dono, would you please continue to explain? Sarutobi asked because he wanted some answers. HMPH, alright. You see, this whole mess was the plan of some fanatics in our village to gain more Kekkei Genkais for Kumo. And before you ask, I'm able to verify my words. But let me ask you something first. Has none of you asked yourself how Koha Sato was able to walk around in your village, avoiding all patrols and finally entering the Hyuga compound unnoticed? Raisin asked and looked around, judging the expressions on your faces, I conclude most of you haven't. What are you indicating, Raikage-sama? Asked Hiashi Hyuga, as he was quite determined to discover how this man was able to enter his clan's compound without anyone noticing. Oh, you don't already know? Asked Raisin feigning surprise. It seems that Konoha's Anbu and Root divisions aren't doing their job very well in keeping Konoha secure and safe. At hearing this, Danzo narrowed his one visible eye at Raisin's jab at him and his Root division. To put it simply, Konoha has a leak, said Raisin simply. That's a lie, stated Danzo, as if there was a leak in Konoha he would know about it and would have sent his Root to deal with it. Oh really, said Raisin with a smile, then tell me Sarutobi. Isn't the council missing one of the counselors? Suddenly Sarutobi frowned because the civilian counselor Atai Haisa really didn't appear to this meeting. As some of you may have noticed by now, is that Atai Haisa of Konoha's civilian council is absent, Raisin said and grinned at the reactions of Konoha's council. Are you implying that the counselor Atai Haisa is a mole? Do you have any proofs for that? Asked Inoichi Yamanaka. Yes, that's what I intended to say. That one of your counselors betrayed your village for money and virtually sold the heiress of the Hyuga clan. After everything went down the drain and the kidnapping failed, he fled to Kaminari no Kuni, Lightning Country, because the traitors from my village apparently guaranteed Atai Haisa a place in Kumo should his involvement in this plot become known, and he has to flee. Unfortunately for him we discovered this plot shortly before and I and my escort were already on the way to Konoha when we seized him. I decided to take him with us, together with the 4 masterminds from Kumo who were behind this plan, for you to interrogate him and verify my words and proving that this whole shit was planned by some traitors and not Kumo itself. Normally I would allow you to interrogate the idiots behind this too, but sadly they knew a few things which are classified as village secrets. Because of that I cannot allow you to interrogate them, but this traitorous counselor of yours should know enough to prevent another war. Raisin explained to Sarutobi and the Konoha council. You said you took Atai Haisa and the 4 traitors with you, but I can't see them. Where are they? Asked a civilian. Shinigami, unseal them, Raisin ordered the masked woman, who took out a sealing scroll, kneeled on the ground before Raisin, and unraveled the scroll. Inside the scroll were 5 sealing arrays visible, and each displayed the kanjis for traitor, oit, by Kakuto. She made a few hand signs and then put her hand on a seal that was connected with the 5 sealing arrays, and in a puff of smoke 5 men appeared. They all looked rather beaten. Especially Atai Haisa looked as if he was run down by a stampede, and as Sarutobi knows Raisin that is likely to be very close to the truth. After the men appeared, the masked woman grabbed Tai Hysa by the neck and threw him towards two Anbus and said, "Here. This one is for Konoha. Do with him as you please. Anbu, take this man to the T&I department. Inoichi, I want you to interrogate him and find out if he has been selling Konoha out, right?" "No," the Sandaime Hokage ordered, after which Inoichi Yamanaka nodded and accompanied the Anbus to the T&I department. After they left, everyone's attention was focused on Raisin again. "Excuse me, Raikage-sama. If you allow the question, why exactly have you brought the four men who you said had planned all this with you if you cannot allow Konoha to interrogate them to prove your words?" asked Hiashi Hyuga. "For proofing my words, in this scroll are the video recordings of their confessions sealed," Raisin explained and then tossed the scroll to Sarutobi who catched it with ease. "And I brought this bastards to Konoha to have them executed in your presence to show you that neither Kumo nor I as the Raikage tolerate treason and how we deal with traitors." Raisin continued to speak and after he was finished, he snapped with his fingers. On this signal 3 of his guards were acting immediately. B slit the throat of the false ambassador in front of him with one of his swords. The woman called Shinigami drew her sword and decapitated 2 of the traitors in a flash with a single slash, and A simply grabbed the remaining 2 traitors by their necks and snapped them like toothpicks. The whole execution didn't last much longer than 5 seconds. The Konoha were mostly unaffected by it, while the civilians, which were unaccustomed to such events, were quite shocked about it. "Was this really necessary?" asked a blonde councilwoman. "What's your name?" Raisin asked the woman. "Mibuki Haruno," the councilwoman stuttered. "Well, Mibuki Haruno, as you certainly know, a hidden village is a dictatorship. And this is what normally happens to traitors in a shinobi village. They undermined my authority and they got what they deserved. They were endangering my village's safety, so I had to deal with them. Because a Kage ever has to ensure his village's safety," Raisin explained to the woman. After Raisin had ended, the second woman in his escort, Retsu Anohana, stepped beside him and spoke. "Raikage-sama, we should not forget the second reason for our presence here in Konoha." "You're right, Retsu. Thank you for reminding me," Raisin replied and then looked in the direction of Hiashi Hyuga. "You there, Hyuga clan head? How is your wife and your brother?" "What?" came the simple response of Hiashi Hyuga because of all questions he anticipated for was this the last, but very fast he put his Hyuga image back in place. "Why are you asking? It doesn't concern you." "That's where you're wrong. Because they were seriously injured by a Kumo nin, it concerns me a lot," Raisin growled at the seemingly arrogant response of the Hyuga. "From what I've heard, your wife and your brother were both poisoned by Koha Sato's attacks and no medic of Konoha was able to help them." To a point. "What are your intentions?" asked the Sandaime Hokage. "I take this as the answer that they still suffer from this poison," Raisin replied, and after a short glance at the angry Hiashi he continued to explain, "Because I expected that your medics would be unable to cure Hitomi Hyuga and Hisashi Hyuga, I ordered Retsu Anohana to accompany me, and if you're allowing it, she and Shinigami are going with you to your clan's compound and try to heal your wife and your brother. They are both some of Kumo's best Hiram medic ninja. Anohana is also called the Chiyu Megami, goddess of healing, back in Kumo, and it is said that she is nearly as talented as Tsunade Senju as a medic." "Why should you offer this?" asked Hiashi with a skeptic expression. "Raikage-sama is offering this to you because he tries to prevent the beginning of a new war and because he would hate it if the actions of this fool Sato would cause even more grief than it already has. Hyuga-san, if you have nothing against it, then please allow me and Shinigami-san to help already. We may still are able to save your wife and your brother." Anohana replied with a smile that was all too sweet while having a dark menacing aura around her that scared the Hyuga clan head shitless. Hiashi wasn't the only one that was intimated by the dark aura around her, as most of the Konoha nin and council members were intimated by her, and they all began to wonder how this woman could seem so kind and friendly, yet so terrifying at the same time. "Follow me. I will take you to my wife and my brother," Hiashi said to the 2 women after he calmed himself down and received the permission from the Sandaime Hokage by a nod and then left the chamber with them. Hyuga compound. A shunshin later, Hiashi and the 2 Kumo Kunoichi were approaching the entrance of the Hyuga compound. "Hiashi-san, it might be useful if you would make it sure that no one of your clan tries to attack Shinigami-san and me while we're treating your wife and your brother, because this might would causing us to make a mistake. What could end bad for these 2, Anohana said, again with her all too sweet smile. This scared Hiashi again, but he still replied in a typical Hyuga manner, "Is that a threat?" "No. Retsu simply stated the truth because we're running out of time to save them even without someone attacking us," Kushina answered. "You have a point. But it still feels a bit weird to me to lay the life of my wife and my brother in the hands of shinobis from the same village as the man who attacked them in the first place," Hiashi said. "You mostly have to thank Raisin for this because he is an honorable man and hates such underhanded tactics." But I can assure you that everyone in his escort thinks the same, especially Retsu and I are detesting the idea of kidnapping a young girl to use her as a breeding machine, because we're women too. And because I'm a mother myself, if I had something to say in this matter, I would have tortured this bastards until they would beg for death because they tried to kidnap a child. Kushina snarled as a reply. While Hiashi was raising an eyebrow about in what a familiar manner this woman was referring to the Raikage, he also made a mental note to avoid becoming the target of her wrath at all cost. I will ensure that every one of my clan will leave alone, he reassured the two Kunoichis. A few minutes later and after Hiashi shouted orders to a group of Hyugas not to attack the two Kunoichis, while he targeted them with a strong killing intent in order to clarify his position, the three of them were approaching the room where Hitomi and Hisashi Hyuga were laying in their sickbeds. When they entered the room they saw immediately that Hitomi and Hisashi were closer to death than life. They both were really pale, their faces were rather haggard, and they breathed erratically. Shinigami-san, you run a diagnostic jutsu on Hitomi-san to check how far advanced the poisoning is, will I do the same with Hisashi-san, because he's in a worse state than her, Anohana ordered. Kushina nodded and they both went to the side of the respective patient and started to check them. After a couple minutes, Anohana frowned and stopped the jutsu. She walked over to Kushina and talked shortly with her. She then turned around and faced Hiashi. I'm sorry. Well, we will be able to save Hitomi-san, we can't do anything for Hisashi-san, Anohana said with a sad expression. How is that possible? Why aren't you able to save Hisashi too? They were poisoned nearly at the same time. Hell, Hisashi was poisoned a few minutes after Hitomi, Hiashi replied with a pained voice. That's because of the special poison this bastard used. It was not a natural poison, but a synthetically one. You have to understand that this poison, while it in less than a minute after it is injected causes the victim extreme pain and paralyze it, actually spreads quite slowly through the body, but if it reaches vital organs like the heart, the lung or the brain, it begins to destroy them. The problem we have is that your wife was injured at the forearm, while your brother was injured at the chest. Because of this, in the case of your wife, the poison first had to reach the vital organs and only could cause minor damage to them until now, while in your brother's case, the poison already had caused lethal damage to his lungs and his heart, Anohana explained. I think I understand. How much time has my brother left? Hiashi asked. It's unlikely that he will survive the night. The damage which was caused to his lungs and heart is too severe for me to heal it. He will be suffocated by his own blood. All I can do for him is to make it as painless as possible to him, Anohana offered to Hiashi. Could you please do that? I don't want that he has to suffer, Hiashi replied with a pleading voice. Anohana nodded and pulled a syringe out of somewhere and injected its content into Hisashi. She then faced Hiashi. This will let him feel no pain and also let him gain consciousness for one last time, because I'm sure you want to talk with your brother for a last time. Soon after she finished her explanation, Hisashi coughed a few times and opened his eyes. He looked around and when he saw his brother at his bedside he smiled weakly, but when he saw the two Kumo Kunoichi, a look of concern and confusion appeared on his face. Brother, it's nice to see you. I already thought I would never wake up again. But why I'm seeing two Kumo Shinobis in this room? Or are they just my hallucinations? What happened after I blacked out? He asked with a weak voice. It's nice to see you conscious too. I will tell you the short version of what happened. After you and Hitomi were both injured by this Kumo scum, he tried to flee with Hinata, but I was able to stop and kill him. After that they were demanding my head as compensation for me killing their ambassador. The day, 4 days after you were injured, suddenly the Raikage himself appeared in Konoha and revealed that this whole thing was plotted by some traitors from Kumo and a traitor from Konoha. This two are Anohana-san and Shinigami-san. They are part of the Raikage's escort and apparently some of Kumo's best Hiramin, medic ninja. They've come here to try to heal you and Hitomi from the poison this bastard used, Hiashi was explaining to Hisashi. Well, I guess I have to thank them, Hisashi chuckled weakly. This caused Hiashi's expression to become depressed and he explained, I have to tell you something. While they're able to save Hitomi-chan, they cannot save you, because of this thrice-be-damned poison your lungs are too damaged for every healing jutsu. This answer caused Hisashi's expression to turn into one of shock. After getting a hold of himself, he asked with a blank face, tell me brother, how much time have I left? Anohana-san said you will not survive the night. Because of an injection from her you're feeling no pain, but aside from that she could do nothing for you, Hiashi replied with tears in his eyes. This shocking news made Hisashi lose himself, but at the sight of Hiashi, his strong brother and clan head, who cried, something Hisashi hasn't seen since their childhood, about the news he told him, Hisashi got a hold of himself and tried to make it not harder for his brother as it already was. Don't grieve over it too much, brother. It was always my fate to die someday while protecting the main family. I'm happy I could partially choose my own death and that I'm dying while protecting some of the people I consider as my family." Hisashi smiled, but suddenly he was shaken by a coughing fit and a trickle of blood appeared from his mouth. "It seems I'm running out of time. Does any of you has an empty scroll, a brush and ink?" Kushina nodded and unsealed the requested items and handed them over to Hisashi while asking him, "What do you need that for?" "I wish to write a farewell letter to my son Niji," Hisashi replied with a smile and started to write in a remarkable nice handwriting, considering his shaking hands. After he finished writing, he closed the scroll and gave it to Hisashi. "Brother, please promise me to protect Niji. Give him this scroll when you think he will be ready for it, as I'm sure that for some time after my death, he would not believe what I wrote into the scroll, even if you would give it to him, and because of his hate and grief he would only think of it as an prevarication of the main family. Please make sure that he will understand it one day that I died, not because of something like fate or someone forcing me to protect Hitomi and Hinata, even if you have to beat him to a pulp in order to gain this realization. Please also promise me to try to change our clan's barbaric and stuck-up ways. And you, Anohana-san and Shinigami-san, please save my brother's wife and let me be the only casualty of this incident." Hisashi asked them all with a dwindling voice. After Hisashi, Anohana and Kushina voiced their promises to him, Hisashi once again had a coughing fit and shortly after it, Hisashi died with a small smile on his face. After they saw the life disappeared from his eyes, Hisashi had tears streaming down his face, while Anohana looked sad. But the most surprising reaction for Hisashi was the one of the masked woman who was called Shinigami, because she stepped next to his dead brother's body, closed Hisashi's still open eyes with her hands, and after touching the spot on his forehead where before it disappeared after he died, once was the Hyuga Sumki no Juinjutsu, Hyuga main family's cursed seal technique, or as it commonly was called the Keigo no Tori no Juin, cage bird curse seal. While holding her hands in a small prayer she quietly said with sadness in her voice, "May your soul rest in peace, Hisashi Hyuga, and may you get in the afterlife the freedom that was denied to you during your life." Once she finished her small prayer, she covered the dead body of Hisashi with a white blanket. After 1 minute silence, Anohana spoke, "Hisashi-san, we will now begin to cure Hitomi-san by extracting the poison from her body, but it will be difficult. Whatever you need, Anohana-san, please tell me and I shall get it," spoke Hisashi. "I need you to get several large bowls of hot water and bring them here," ordered Anohana as she was going into her healer mode, where she got Kushina and Hisashi to help her get everything needed to help Hitomi Hyuga. Soon enough Hisashi had servants bring over around 24 bowls of hot water to the room. Anohana then had him and a servant help restrain Hitomi when she extracted the poison from the Hyuga clan head's wife's body. Once Hisashi and the servant had restrained Hitomi and were holding on to her to make sure that she stayed still, Anohana then used her Chakura no Mesu, chakra scalpel, to make an incision into one of the affected parts of the Hyuga clan head's wife's body, after which she used the Seiken Shutsu no Jutsu, delicate illness extraction technique, where she extracted the toxin from the Hyuga clan head's wife's body, while at the same time Kushina used the Shimsen Jutsu, mystical palm technique, to heal the damage that was already made by the poison. It was a slow process and was quite painfully for Hitomi, because even though she was unconscious her body struggled in pain. After about an hour of slow and painful extraction, Anohana finally extracted the last bit of the poison out of the Hyuga clan head's wife's body. "It's done, virtually all the poison is out of her body now," sighed Anohana as she wiped the sweat off her brow, and after saying this, she mixed something together with herbs she took out of one of her pouches and a bit of the extracted poison and injected the gained liquid with a syringe into Hitomi Hyuga. "Then will Hitomi-chan recover?" asked Hisashi hopefully. "She should, because I have used some of the extracted poison to help make a medicine that will take care of the remainder of the poison in her body and help her body recover more quickly. She will regain consciousness in 2 days at the latest, but she has to stay in the bed for another week and do nothing that put a strain to her body for 2 months, since she is in a fragile state right now. Thank you Anohana-san, Shinigami-san. I cannot thank you enough for saving my wife. I'm forever in your department," said Hisashi as he was kneeling on the floor with his head down in gratitude to the two Kunoichis. "You owe us nothing, because it's our fault your wife and brother were injured in the first place. But thank you for being so thankful and not hold any grudge against us because of the idiocy of a few people," Shinigami Kushina answered. Suddenly the door was opened and a young girl, which appeared to be around 3 years old and had dark blue hair and was dressed in a white nightgown, entered the room. At seeing the two unknown women she hid behind Hisashi with a loud geep. "Hinata, why are you still awake and wandering around? You should sleep already," Hisashi said to his daughter and frowned. "BBB but I see Siko couldn't sleep, BB back because I'm worried about OK Aka-san. Aka-san or Ka-san means mother, Ka-chan is another less formal way to say mother," stuttered Hinata, and then glanced at the two women she didn't know, pointed at them and asked, "Oh odd Otu-san, Otu-san or Tu-san means father, Tu-chan is another less formal way to say father, who are they?" "Don't be so rude Hinata. These are Retsu Anohana-san, and the woman with the mask is Shinigami-san. They are here to help your mother, Hiashi replied. Does that mean Aka-san will get better and awake soon? Asked little Hinata as she dared to hope. The Ashi just nodded to her that it was true. This caused Hinata quickly to forget her usual shyness, and she ran over to the two Kunoichis and hugged both of them tightly and started to cry tears of joy while saying, "Thank you," over and over again. Anohana smiled at the little girl while Kushina's mask hid her smile. She then kneeled down on the floor and looked at the small girl before her and said, "Listen Hinata. I know some idiots from my village did wrong things to you and your family, but don't use them as an example to judge all of us as the same. Because you seem to be a friendly and nice girl, I will give you an advice. As nice as it is to be friendly, a woman, especially in our world, must be strong to defend the one she loves, or she risks to lose everything and everyone she loves. I can also tell you that most will try to order you how you have to act and how you have to behave yourself. Don't listen to them too much and don't try to make everything right for everyone, because that's impossible to do and you would only ruin yourself if you try to do it. As long as your family and your precious people are happy with you and how you are, you can ignore safely most of the others. And if you ever try to accomplish something on the traditional way and can't reach your goal, don't be afraid to search your own way. Because sometimes traditions are nothing but a hindrance, especially if they handicap you in some way. Do you understand?" Hinata shook her head, so Kushina tried to explain it to the little girl on an easier way, "Okay, as a figurative example. You are on the way from one village to another one. Suddenly there is a deep ravine in your way and no bridge over it. Now you can try to climb down on one side of the ravine and climbing up on the other side, but if you cannot do this you can simply search a way around the ravine. Do you understand now?" At seeing an imaginary question mark floating over the little girl's head, Kushina sighed and said, "It's not troubling if you don't understand it yet. Just remember what I said to you and someday you will understand it or your parents will explain it to you. IW will remember it and I'll try to understand it too. And IW will become ST strong like MI Aka-san and MI O2-san in the future to protect my family, so that they never will be hurt by evil people again," Hinata stated and smiled at the masked woman in front of her. This caused Kushina to chuckle while she was stroking over the girl's hair. The Ashi was flabbergasted. First his daughter ignored her usual shyness and hugged Anohana and the woman called Shinigami. Then because the latter gave his daughter a few encouraging words and some advices for the future which would be useful for Hinata, his daughter showed a confident side of herself which he has never seen her showing before. And his daughter talked with her, Shinigami, as if she, Hinata, knew her for a long time. This caused Hiashi to show a small smile and silently thank this woman because she encouraged Hinata to do the same thing as his wife Hitomi. To search for her own way and branch away from the clan's traditions if they should hinder her in her progress. And be thorn in the eyes of the clan elders. Anohana enjoyed watching the interaction between Kushina and this little girl too. But as much she enjoyed to watch them, they had no time for this. Because of that she cleared her throat and spoke, "As much as I enjoy this conversation, I think we have other things to do and it's past bedtime for Hinata-san too." "You're right Anohana-san. Hinata, it's time for you to go back to your bedroom and go to sleep," Hiashi said. "But O2-san, IW would like to sleep here W with Aka-san and W wait for her to wake up," Hinata begged while she tried to break her father's resistance with a famous puppy dog eyes look. "I'm sorry Hinata-san, but that's not possible because your mother needs to rest at the moment. But she should awake tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, and as soon as she's awake you can see her," Anohana replied with a serious expression which showed she will not budge about it. "Anohana-san is right Hinata. I will ask one of the clan members to bring you to your bedroom because I have accompanied Anohana-san and Shinigami-san back to the council," Hiashi replied. This caused Hinata to pout, but when Hiashi ordered a female servant to take Hinata to her bedroom, the little girl obeyed and after she said goodbye to the two Kumo Kunoichi, Hinata went with the servant. As soon as Hinata had left Hiashi ordered a few other servants to move the dead body of his brother to another room until they could prepare his Ashi's funeral. Once he ordered a few Hyugas to guard his wife and daughter, Hiashi and the two women went back to the council chamber. After they walked quietly for a few minutes, Hiashi suddenly faced the masked woman and spoke, "You know Shinigami-san, you remind me about a woman which I once knew." "How comes?" "And who was this woman?" asked the masked woman. "She was the best friend of my wife and you reminds me about her because like her you have a fierce temper and there is something else on you I can't describe as well. She also wouldn't politely address even the Hokage and only call him old man," Hiashi replied with a laugh. "This must be an amazing woman I would like to meet. Who and where is she?" At this question Hiashi's expression became sad and he replied, "Her name was Kushina Uzumaki and she died, together with her son and any family she still had left, more than 2 years ago." "I'm sorry to hear this. You sound as if you were very close to her." "As I said, she was my wife's best friend and one of the greatest persons I've ever met. Sadly, because of some of this village's citizens' foolishness and petty hatred, she and her son suffered greatly. Her death nearly destroyed my wife, and I wish I could have done more, Hiashi said, and let his head hung. This is really a sad story. It seems the Konoha has as much problems on the inside as Kumo and Hana said, and Hiashi and Shinigami nodded in agreement. But I shouldn't bother you with this village's own problems. Besides, we should hurry and return to the council before anything else happens. Hiashi finished the conversation, and the three of them disappeared in a shunshin. Okage Tower, Council Chamber. In the moment Hiashi Hyuga left the council chamber together with Retsu Anohana and Shinigami, the Sandaime Hokage could see the back of Anohana's Haori, and once he read what was written there, he remembered something. He faced Raisin and asked, Raikage don't know if you allow the question. Is the writing on Anohana-san's Haori her moniker? Immediately everyone paid attention, because the Sandaime Hokage wouldn't ask such a question without a reason. Yes, it is her moniker indeed, Raisin replied with a grin, because he knew exactly why Sarutobi asked this. Why should it matter if this is her moniker, Hokage-sama? Asked Fugaku Uchiha in an arrogant voice, because he didn't understand why the Sandaime Hokage looked so worried at the Raikage's confirmation. It matters, because this woman is an S-rank shinobi too. And not one from Kumo. Sarutobi replied with a frown, effectively shocking the Konoha Nin council, and he continued to explain, I've heard about her in the past. She was one of 3 shinobis who made Yugito no Sado, the village hidden in the hot springs, famous at the time it was still a shinobi village. These 3 were a kunoichi called Retsu who possessed great skills as a medic and even greater skills in kenjutsu. Because of her love for fighting and because she grants her opponents a bloody and cruel death, she gained the moniker Chimamire no Shai, Bloody Death. The second one was Tenjiro Korinji, who was also known as Sentenkai, Hot Spring Demon. He was the teacher of Retsu and also created a secret jutsu which he could use equally for healing and attacking, and his skills as an Iram Nin, medic ninja, are almost as famed as Tsunade Senju's own medical skills. The last one was a man called Haiden, who became mostly known after Yugito stopped being a hidden village and became a hot spring resort because in his anger about this, he killed many of the former shinobi. It seems that the woman Retsu Anohana of the Raikage's escort and the one from former Yugito are the same person. You're right, Sarutobi. Retsu Anohana was a Yugito nin before she joined Kumo. A few months after Yugito stopped being a hidden village and started to call itself Ikusa o Wasareta Sado, the village that has forgotten wars, my sons A and B met Retsu, who was traveling around as a wandering healer back then, during one of their missions, and they managed to convince her to join Kumo. Raisin explained to Sarutobi and the Konoha Council, and at the same time he enjoyed himself while watching the flabbergasted expressions of Sarutobi and the Konoha Council. It was clearly visible to him that most shinobis were asking themselves why such a mighty kunoichi would join Kumo and what they offered her to persuade her. Danzo stayed cool on the outside, but inside his thoughts were racing. He was greatly worried that Kumo had so many famous shinobis without him knowing, and he searched for ways to get them on his side or eliminate them so that they can't become a threat to him and his plans in the future. Raisin saw the gears turning inside Danzo's head, and for anyone who knew anything about the man who was called the Shinobi no Yami, the darkness of the shinobi, it wasn't really hard to guess what he was thinking about. Because of this, Raisin gave Danzo a don't you dare look. After this nobody spoke anymore and there was nothing but uncomfortable and tense silence until Inoichi Yamanaka returned. The Sandaime Hokage's face lit up at the return of the Yamanaka clan head because the mood in the chamber felt like it would escalate any minute, so he hoped Inoichi would bring some good news to cool everyone down. Ah, Inoichi. What news do you have for us? He asked the Yamanaka patriarch. Well, I entered the mind of this traitorous fool and found every word of Raikage-sama verified. It seems this was really the plan of a small group from the beginning, because the contact person of Itai Haisa made repeatedly clear to him that if Kumo and the Raikage found out about this, they would all die. And yes, Haisa sold Konoha out for money, Inoichi told them. After he heard this, a small smile appeared on the Sandaime Hokage's face. Then he looked Raisin in the eyes and said, I'm glad that everything you said was true. Now that everything is confirmed and the danger of war is prevented, we can continue the talk about an alliance between Kumo and Konoha. The answer to this was a snort, and Raisin looked at the Sandaime Hokage, as if this have lost his mind. At seeing the Sandaime's baffled face, Raisin said, look Sarutobi. I don't know if this whole alliance stuff was an idea of the traitors to get into Konoha and they sent you a message, or if you sent a message to Kumo and they intercepted it before I could get it, but it doesn't matter what of this happened because I never had the intention to form an alliance with Konoha. Raikage don't know, what do you mean? The Sandaime tried to ask, but he was interrupted by Raisin. Tell me Sarutobi. Why should I and my village form an alliance with a village which has fallen as low as Konoha did? As soon as Raisin said this, the council chamber erupted in shouts of rage. How dare you to say that about Konoha? Came a particular loud shout and was clearly audible over the whole noise. With the greatest of ease, Raisin replied with an amused expression. This caused the Kumonin to smirk, and a few of them even had to hold back their laughter. On the Konoha group, especially the civilians, Raisin's answer had an entire different effect. They were speechless, at least for a few moments. When they were about to start shouting once more, before the situation could get out of control again, the Sandaime silenced the council with blasts of killing intent. Just this moment Hiashi Hyuga, Retsu Anohana and Shinigami returned. While the two Kunoichi joined the Kumo group again, Hiashi returned to his seat among the other clan heads. "Hiashi, how's your wife and your brother?" the Sandaime Hokage asked, thankful for the diversion. "Thanks to Anohana-san and Shinigami-san, my wife will recover soon, but sadly for my brother was every help too late, he died not an hour ago," Hiashi replied in the usual stoic Hyuga manner. "I'm sorry to hear this about your brother," the Hokage replied sadly, "but Raikage Dono, could you please explain how you came to say the things you said about Konoha?" "That's easy to explain. Well, it's true the Konoha is the oldest of all hidden villages and also was most likely the strongest in the past too. You people grew arrogant and take the fact for granted that you are the biggest, strongest, best and whatever else. I mean, I and my escort could approach Konoha without anyone noticing us, and at the gate were only two Chunin who thought they could make demands of a bigger group of Shinobis, although any of its members is alone by far stronger than those two combined, and after we knocked them out, we entered Konoha and the Hokage Tower without anyone notice or hinder us. If this isn't enough, this village was founded by Hashirama Senju, Madara Uchiha and Tobirama Senju in order to bring peace to the elemental nations, and until today you like Konoha to be seen as the noblest of the Great Five and a kind and caring village. Yet most of Konoha's citizens, civilians and shinobis alike, spit on the dying wish of Minato Namikaze, your Yondaime Hokage, a man who is hailed as a hero by your village and even is respected by myself, my sons and many Kumonins as well, and against the wish of the Yondaime who wanted that the boy was seen as a hero. They scream for the death of a baby because the boy was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Raisin ranted and it was clearly visible that he got angrier with every word he said. At the sight of the shocked faces of Sarutobi and some of the Konoha in Raisin continued with an expression which was a mix of anger and spitefulness. "Yes, Sarutobi. I know everything about the incident of this boy and that in the end he was killed together with his mother 2 years ago. I even know that some of your villagers still celebrate the day he died. And I also know why it is so disgusting they called for the baby's death and the same time call Namikaze a hero, as if it wouldn't be disgusting enough to call for the public execution of a fucking baby." At the end Raisin shouted on the top of his voice and looked furious, like many of his escort who looked at least disgusted. The Sandaime Hokage looked very depressed now as well as some of the Shinobis, but on the inside the Sandaime was nearly panicking, he knows it. Kumo or at least Raisin knows that Naruto was not only the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, but also Minato's son. This is bad, because it's not a secret that Raisin and his two sons A and Killer B respected Minato. I also know that Killer B is the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi, and Raisin is highly protective of his family. Now it makes even more sense that he has such a low opinion of Konoha. Raisin then continued with a furious expression, "If some of you still haven't realized why I detest Konohagakure so much, then listen. Why should I form an alliance with a village which screams for the death of a baby because of something that was beyond its control? And why should we form an alliance with a village that hates Jinchurikis with a passion and even killed their own Jinchuriki when it is well known that my son B also is a Jinchuriki?" Again, as soon as Raisin finished, the shouting started. "How dare you to criticize us for dealing with a demon brat? Wait, how dare you bringing one of this abominations here?" Immediately after the second shout was heard, the whole chamber fell dead silent and the councilwomen who said it instinctively knew she was fucked sideways. Instantly most of the Kumo escort held back the two roaring leviathans known as Raisin and A, while the Konoha watched, not really sure if they should act or not. But they all forgot the woman with the red mask, Shinigami. Suddenly she appeared before the councilwomen with a loud mouth, and before anyone of the Kumo-nin or the Konoha-nin could react, Shinigami kicked the councilwoman into the air, then suddenly appeared besides the woman and shouted Shinigami chop. Then she made a vicious chop at the councilwoman while both were still airborne. To everyone's, from Konoha, surprise, as soon the hit made contact with the councilwoman's body, she, the councilwoman, was sent flying to the ground with incredible speed. After an impact that shocked the whole tower again, and with enough force to nearly break the seal-reinforced floor of the chamber, the broken body of the now dead woman could be seen in the crater. This unnatural strength reminds me about Tsunade. This Shinigami woman has to have used the same principle like my former student and has created her own version of this technique. This means she has to have almost perfect chakra control. It's almost scary to see another seemingly hot-tempered woman with this strength, the Sandaime Hokage thought with shocked amazement. This is bad. That someone managed to recreate Tsunade Senju's superhuman strength while no one of my subordinates was successful. Unacceptable. Now have Kumo of all places access to this technique. Kumo has become a serious threat to my plans and Konoha. Danzo was rambling in his head. Dear Kami, what a strength. Were the thoughts of the equally flabbergasted Hiashi Hyuga, Inoichi Yamanaka and Shimza Akimichi. What a power. I like her. She acts without hesitation and shows those arrogant men that we Kunoichi are as deadly as they are, if not deadlier. This were the thoughts of Tsume Inyazuka, who watched the whole thing with a slightly amused expression. The Inyazuka matriarch was barely able to restrain herself from jumping at Shinigami and made the masked woman her new best friend and to hug her for silencing those annoying banshee of a councilwoman. Besides herself, Tsume, Mabuki Haruno, as okay as a civilian woman could be in Tsume's opinion, and one of the few civilian counselors who would think with her brain and not with the wallet, and Kaharu Udatane, one of the 3 power-hungry fossils, elders, the now deceased councilwoman was one of the only 4 female council members, but because of her habit to shout Tsume never really liked her because she caused her and her companion Kurumaru earaches on a regular basis. Troublesome. It seems as if this woman has recreated Tsunade-sama's superhuman strength, at least partially, came the observation of Shikaku Nara, who somehow managed to rest his head with the face down on his arms, but still observe everything and also say it, as if it was the most boring thing he ever saw. Assuming this would be the most logical thing, because it's the most logical reason why such a simple attack had this illogical high strength behind it. Why the strength would be illogical if it's not from Tsunade-sama's superhuman strength or a technique based on the same principle. Because Shinigami-san was the air while she attacked and she did not use the power of her movement because she moved upward while attacking downward and she also took almost no swing before she hit. And because my hive did only register her using a small amount of chakra, it can be nothing different technique to get such destruction, with only such a small amount of chakra. Shibi Aburam threw in his 2 cents. Troublesome woman and troublesome superhuman strength, came the silent mutter of Shikaku Nara. Because most of the Konoha were this surprised, only a few of them saw what happened next coming, but were unable to react in any way. Right after Shinigami landed on the floor, 2 Anbus rushed in her direction while they draw their swords. The only reaction of masked woman consisted in her gripping the hilt of her own sword with her right hand. Suddenly 2 people stepped in the way of the 2 attacking Anbu. The Anbu on the right side suddenly faced Kenpachi Zaraki, who stepped in front of Shinigami. Because he didn't expected this and he moved so fast the Anbu was unable to react and his sword hit Zaraka's chest right in the center. To the surprise of everyone from Konoha, the sword didn't pierce the skin of the large man and the Anbu was stopped dead in his tracks. He felt as if he tried to pierce a brick wall. While he still tried to understand what was going on, a loud scream of pure agony caused everyone to look at the Anbu on the left side. The Anbu on the left side was not as lucky as his partner because the person who appeared in front of him was only visible to him for an instant, then she disappeared again. The next thing he knew was that his whole body was hurting in a pain like he never felt before. Enter Naruto unreleased soundtrack Dark Chakra. The reason for this was no one else than Retsu Anohana. In an instant she did appear in front of the Anbu and a second later she reappeared behind the Anbu with her sword drawn. When the people in the room laid their eyes on her and the Anbu, many shocked gasps could be heard and some civilians even threw up at the sight. What they saw was a prime example how Anohana gained her moniker Chimamire no Shy, Bloody Death. The body of the pitiable Anbu was now covered in deep cuts and blood covered everything around him. In the same instant she had passed him, Anohana had managed to cut the poor Anbu at least 40 times. But what shocked the bystanders wasn't only the brutality and cruelty of Anohana's attack but the fatal change her appearance had made. Her hair wasn't bound in a braid down her front anymore but was open and waved behind her as if a slight wind was moving it. Because of this a scar had become visible which started on the top of her chest and went down between her breasts. But the scariest change was her face. While she before always had a gentle expression and smiled often, now her expression showed nothing but cruelty, bloodlust and not the slightest amount of mercy, and her gentle smile had become a bloodthirsty smirk. She then moved to the still screaming Anbu and before someone could act she drove her sword into his skull, killing him instantly. The right Anbu wanted to avenge his fallen comrade but when he tried to rush at Anohana, he realized that he couldn't move his sword and when he looked why his blade didn't move, he saw that Kenpachi had gripped it as if the blade wasn't even sharp. Kenpachi looked at the Anbu in front of him and said with a bored expression and said, "Hey, you've tried to cut me down, haven't you? Come on, not with this dull thing. I really don't have time to be bothered with someone like you, you're not at my level." While he was talking to the Anbu, Kenpachi increased the strength of his grip and broke the Anbu's blade with his bare hand and while everyone, including the Anbu, was still stunned Kenpachi drew his own sword and with a drawing movement, he bisected the Anbu with a cut from the right hip to the left collarbone. As the Konoha group saw this and then saw Kenpachi's blade, everyone thought the same thing, how the hell was he able to cut anything with his blade? They thought this because the blade looked like a chipped and seemingly worn down blade and looked more like a saw than a sword. Logically it shouldn't be sharp enough to cut a human in half, but Kenpachi did it as if it was nothing. Denpachi and Unohana then faced the Konoha nin, and everyone was hit by their combined killing intent and bloodlust with such a force that all of them had short illusion from their deaths by the blades of these two. The civilian council was lying on the ground, out cold because of the pressure, while the Konoha nin including the Sandaime Hokage were struggling to resist. Denpachi then said with a bloodthirsty grin, "So, who wants to meet the blade of my Nozarashi, weather beaten one, next?" It looked as if Unohana and Kenpachi were about to attack the Konoha nin when the loud voice of Raisin could be heard. "Retsu. Kenpachi. Enough, stand down." Then Naruto unreleased soundtrack Dark Chakra. Immediately the pressure disappeared and an instant later Retsu Unohana and Kenpachi Zaraki stood back there where they were standing before, with their swords sheathed and Unohana surprisingly with her hair back in a braid down her front again. She even had her gentle expression back, and if the Konoha nin hadn't seen her killing the Anbu the way she did, none of them would have believed that her moniker fits her. Raisin faced the still shocked Konoha group and said, "You have to excuse Shinigami. She is a bit touchy if someone insults me or my family. But as B is my son and this foolish counselor of yours was stupid enough to insult him and me, it was her right to execute her on the spot. You know that in the past wars have started for less than insulting the family of the Kage or the Kage himself. But you really have become old, Sarutobi. To think that you were once a man I respected and now you aren't even able to control your subordinates anymore and let the civilians and the elders undermine your authority is really sad. I think with this we're finished because I have nothing to say anymore." Raisin rose from his chair and was about to leave the chamber when he suddenly reminded something. He turned around once more and faced Danzo. "Before I forget it. If you even think about sending your mindless drones after any of my shinobi or into Kumo, consider this as my only warning for you. Should I catch only one more of your goddamn roots, I will personally come to Konoha to get your head and place it on a pike in my garden, understand?" Raisin shouted into Danzo's face, and while he did this he pulled out a scroll and unsealed a dozen heads, some still with featureless Anbu masks over their faces. "If you look at their tongues you will find a cursed seal imprinted on the back of it, and the only one who used this method or specific seal is your root." Raisin continued while glaring at Danzo. The heavily bandaged, black-haired man who was seemingly missing his right arm and eye had a cross-shaped scar on his chin and was bundled up in a large haori didn't even flinch or show any other visible reaction at the threat, but on the inside he was furious. "Damn those Kumo bastards. These are all of my subordinates I've sent to Kumo and they were some of the best in espionage and infiltration I had at my disposal. No wonder there were no reports for quite some time now. How could they capture all of them without the rest of us recognizing it? And how does he know about Root? Damn you Danzo. As if our relationship with Kumo wasn't bad enough, I'm starting to think these Root are a potential boomerang for Konoha, especially as long as they are under the command of Danzo," the Sandaime was thinking while he glared at his former teammate and friend. "Well, that's everything from my side. I will take my leave now because I have several important things to do back in Kumo. Oh, and again I'm very sorry for the grief of your family," Hiashi Hyuga Raisin said, and before someone could answer, he and his escort had left the chamber. They also had taken the bodies of the executed traitors from Kumo with them. For some time after they left, there was silence until suddenly Tsume Yuzuka spoke. "Is it only me, or has someone else felt something back when the Anbus were killed? I ask because my and Kuramaru's instincts went crazy because of these two, especially this man Kenpachi." "What do you mean Yuzuka-san?" "Every one of us has felt the immense pressure," replied a civilian. "No, that's not what she means. I have felt it too. Those two were about to attack us, especially this Kenpachi, and only the presence of the Raikage prevented him from doing so. I say this because I'm sure that if another person in this room than the Raikage ordered Kenpachi not to attack, he would have still done it. And there is something else about him. He seems to be someone who loves fighting and killing to a point where he practically lives for it," replied the Sandaime with a tired voice. "I have felt something too," Inoichi Yamanaka said, gaining everyone's attention. "I'm not really talented as a sensor, but even I could tell that this man Kenpachi has chakra reserves beyond everything what I call normal. The only people in this room who were around his level or even surpassed him were the Raikage, his two sons, this Shinigami woman and Yu Hokage-sama." Suddenly one of the elders, Hamura Midokado, spoke. "Hiruzen, we have to do something. We can't allow Kumo to let us look weak. Yes, if the other nations, especially Iwa, find out how easy they walked into Konoha that would be a disaster," Kaharu Udatane continued. "They are right Sarutobi. We cannot allow Kumo to become too strong. We have to act before they become a threat if they aren't one already," came the comment from Danzo. "And what are you suggesting? Kill them? Don't be a fool Danzo, you know Raisin as well as I do, and like how you have faced him in battle, and you know how strong he is," the Sandaime answered angry. Danzo had to suppress a shudder. Yes, he remembered the fight with Raisin, and it was a fight he only barely survived and which did cost him his right arm. Even now, after all those years, he could remember every second of this fight as if it happened yesterday, and the anger, shock and fear he felt when none of his attacks, even his strongest jutsus, were barely able to inflict something else than a few scratches on Raisin. And you also know how strong Kumo is, because they have many splendid shinobi despite the fact that they have the fewest clans of the major hidden villages, or have I to remind you about your encounter with Ginrei Kichiki, the clan head of the Kichiki clan, which had cost you your right eye. The Sandame continued with a slight grin when he saw that this got a small reaction out of the stoic Danzo, in form of a small frown and some twitching facial muscles. This was because the loss of his eye was a reminder for Danzo, because he lost it in a moment of stupidity and arrogance in his youth when he underestimated his opponent. One of the civilian counselors saw the necessity to voice his thoughts. But Hokage-sama, if we don't do anything, will the other nations not see this as a weakness and, you idiot. I tell you what will happen if we do anything against Kumo. If one of Raisin's shinobi, or even worse one of his family, will die or disappear in the near future under mysterious circumstances, he will declare war on Konoha without the slightest hesitation, and this will most likely end in the total destruction of Konoha. I don't think I have to remind any of you about how destructive a Bijuadama, tailed beast ball, is. The Sandame roared, and many counselors paled as they remembered the destruction the Kyuubi caused with said technique. I think there is not much we can do for now, besides increase the village security. I order also that none of you try anything against Kumo without my approval. I also think it would be the best to end this meeting for now. Because it seems that all of us could need some sleep. If none of you has anything to say anymore, then this meeting is postponed until tomorrow, the Sandame said, and when nobody said anything, he signaled them to leave. Hokage office, 15 minutes later. After everyone left, the Sandame sat alone in his office and was in deep thoughts. How did Raisin manage to get so many inside infos about Konoha? Does this mean Kumo has spies here in positions that could even get their hands on infos about some of our greatest secrets without us noticing it? Then he thought about some of the Raikage's words. Was he right? Did I really become this old and weak? Now that I think about it, he was right. I let the elders and the council undermine my authority and also didn't stop the catastrophe about Naruto when I was still able to do it. I'm sorry Hashirama-sensei, Tobirama-sensei, Minato-kun, Kushina-chan, Naruto-kun, I truly have failed you all many times. But I swear here and now that I will, at least for the short rest of the time I have, again become the Hokage I once was. Maybe I will gain with this the right to meet you in the afterlife and ask you for apology once I die. I have to watch Danzo closely in the future. I have the feeling he's planning something. I may also should try to contact Jiraiya-kun. Yes, that's a good idea. I will send him a message right now. He took an empty scroll and wrote his message for Jiraiya into it. He then sealed the scroll, and after he bit his right thumb he put his right hand on his desk and said Kuchiyus no Jutsu, summoning technique. But the small puff and a cloud of smoke, a little monkey with a Konoha forehead protector, appeared on the desk and saluted once it saw the Sandame. Greetings, Sarutobi-sama. What task can I do for you? The Sandame pointed at the scroll between them. The reason I summoned you was because I need you to deliver this scroll to Jiraiya as fast as possible. No problem, Sarutobi-sama, the little monkey replied, but it will take me some time to track down Jiraiya-san. I'm aware that you will first have to find Jiraiya, but I'm trusting you to find him as fast as possible. Once you've found him, give him this message and inform him that this is important and that I need an answer, the Sandame said with an urgent voice. The little monkey nodded and took the scroll before he faced his summoner again. Understand. I will give my best to find Jiraiya-san quickly and return the moment I got an answer from Jiraiya-san, he said before he saluted again and disappeared in a puff of smoke. I hope Jiraiya gets my message soon. Hopefully it will convince him to return to Konoha. I need his opinion about Kumo and the Hyuga incident, the Sandame thought while he looked at a small clock that stood on his desk and realized it was almost midnight already. He sighed and stretched his arms before he decided to finally call it a day too and left his office. Unknown location. In a large room with no windows stood a single chair. Sitting on this chair was a tall figure. Due to the bad light in the room, it was impossible to see any distinguishing features of the person. Soon a door opened and a cloaked figure entered the room. When the cloaked figure reached the person on the chair, they went down on one knee and lowered their head. Report, came the order from the person on the chair, who was apparently male. Master, as you already know, we've lost our contacts in the council because of their own stupidity. But apparently because they died so fast, nothing about your plans was revealed. Good. Their deaths even could be useful by giving us the support of their families and others close to them, replied the sitting man, before he went into a thinking pose and thought, maybe I should still order my underlings to keep a low profile for a bit, just to be safe. The Raikage has a surprisingly sharp instinct. Better be safe than sorry. We have to keep a low profile for some time, just in case our enemy stays on alert. But this will not have any effects on the plan. We will continue as planned. Sent this message to every one of our allies with a note, they should prevent to draw unnecessary attention and keep a low profile until I order something different, he ordered the kneeling figure in front of him. Yes, master, the cloaked figure said, stood up, bowed and left. Another unknown location, in a clearing somewhere in a forest was burning a small fire. Next to the fire sat Jiraiya and he was deep in thoughts. Suddenly a small cloud of smoke appeared near the edge of the clearing out of nowhere, interrupted Jiraiya's thinking, and he prepared himself for a possible attack. He relaxed once the smoke dissipated and revealed a small monkey with a Konoha forehead protector. Why has sensei sent you to search for me? Greetings, Jiraiya-san. Why did you know who sent me to search you? It took me 6 days to find you. Please tell me what you did to get this info before my arrival, the small monkey asked in a mix of awe and childish curiosity. Jiraiya had to smile about this question because the small monkey had in his awe overlooked the obvious answer and revealed Jiraiya that it was a very young summon, maybe still a child. I knew sensei sent you because the only monkey summoning contract I knew belongs to the Sarutobi clan and the only one of them who would contact me is sensei. You see it's very obvious, Jiraiya answered and laughed when he saw the little monkey face palming. I was sent to deliver this scroll to you. It's from Sarutobi-sama and he ordered me to inform you that this message is really important and right after you finish reading it, he wants you to give me your answer, the little monkey said and handed the scroll over to Jiraiya. Jiraiya took the scroll, opened it and started reading it. Once he finished reading he had a deep frown on his face. After a few silent minutes he looked the monkey in front of him into the eyes and said, I have my answer for sensei. You can say him that I will return to Konoha and meet him, but I will only stay temporary and I will continue to search for hints about Naruto and Kushina. I will return to Konoha as fast as I can, but it will take some time because right now I'm following a hot trail. I will deliver Sarutobi-sama your answer. Good luck with your search, the little monkey said before he disappeared in another cloud of smoke, leaving Jiraiya alone with his thoughts again.